Director of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. My name is Len Welch, and at this time I'll take a roll call. Director Sheriff Watt.
Here.
Director Toombs. Here. Director Cordova.
Here.
Director Gillette.
Here.
Okay, so we have a full board here tonight. And before we go into closed session, I'm going to ask if any member of the public would like to comment. Yes, sir. Come on up. Is that Michael? There's no mic.
Speak very closely.
I think that this is not a bad spot against you and against there too. I think that our, I assume, successful candidate, who is not my first choice, I have to say, that would have been in my group of three as it was in yours. I'm happy, even though I didn't get my first choice, because I think that the board did a pretty good process in this whole thing and got a good bunch of people together. And it was good to see that happen. My real question was about the meeting. Why was the meeting time changed, just out of curiosity?
The meeting time was changed because Pat Gillette had to travel during the time when we were scheduled for our regular meeting, so we moved up the time she would be around the wonderful board to be voting on the issue of the chief.
Because it's very short notice, I think, on Friday. And I was just wondering whether it was actually properly noticed.
Well, actually, I didn't.
Yes, we talked about it last meeting, we voted on it, we moved the day of the meeting, and it was properly noticed.
Okay, so
I will say this, we did, the notice, the first notice that was put up was very unclear, as was pointed out by David Bergen, and we did change and clarify it. We didn't change the substance, we did clarify it after we first put it up, but we did need that.
the other thing that I'm concerned about, I think, I probably didn't hear the discussion of it at the last meeting because I didn't stay to the end of the last meeting. And the reason that I don't stay to the end of the last meeting is because I have to get up very early in the morning these days. And there's been a lot of chat on Nextdoor about the length of meetings. And I think that there are a lot of people in the community who either because of age or because of occupation or because they have children they have to go to school, have had a heck of a hard time, even if you vote to extend the meeting, to stay here until 11:30 and then go home and try to get up. I know that I can't. Yeah.
Would it be a better option to reduce the number of items on the agenda and for, say, 3 or 4 months and twice a month?
Well, that was a suggestion that I was going to float, that you find a way to shorten the agenda so that you could get more participation throughout the whole meeting. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I understand that people don't want to stay late, but, we spend an awful lot of time listening to comments, and actually, most of what you're commenting on really belongs to the part of this meeting. We're trying to get to closed session.
Well, I'm leaving now because I got to get up at 5 tomorrow, so
All right, well,
I can't stay for the.
I can meet you 4:30.
I do a lot of those 4:30s myself, so I understand so far.
So thank you.
Thank you for commenting.
So these are comments about the closed session agenda.
Yeah, you'll get your chance to do the general comments in the open meeting when we break out the closed session and report on what we talk about.
Okay, then can you very quickly review what the agenda is so I know my comments should or not be made now?
Number one, the board will consider any final issues related to the hiring of the new general manager, chief of police. Number two, the board will continue discussions it's been having with council on the terms of the proposed KPPCSD APOA memorandum of understanding.
Okay,
Those are the two items.
very good, okay. Does this system help? Okay,
Yeah, we're going to be breaking.
okay. My name's Rob Furman, F-I-R-M-I-N, not A-N. I'm going to read this just to try to keep it somewhat coherent. All right, and I'm speaking, I am on the KPOA board, but I'm speaking as an individual. This is not a KPOA statement. Okay. Kensington residents must have a real financial plan with which to reveal alternative futures from which decisions about the MOU and a final budget can be derived. Such a plan must be shared with the Kensington public. Kensington cannot afford to negotiate a modified MOU or commit to an MOU even for only 2 years before analyzing alternatives as opposed to presenting a fixed point budget. The KPPCSD board owes it to the Kensington public to stop relying on consultants to come up with fixed budget projections. Instead, we in Kensington deserve to see how the future could play out, to see a plan that accounts explicitly for alternative contingencies. For example, making single assumptions for tax revenue, CalPERS rates, and a police chief GM separation or versus separation subjects us to unacceptable financial risk. Having no idea in advance for how calmly and coolly to survive $0 from the state COPS program, for example, would be irresponsible. The same is true about alternative plans for, I was going to say this building, for the center. There are many more questions to which we must have answers and for which we must have a plan, not just a budget. In general, what are the inputs that combine to derail financial stability, and how will we plan for those? I don't have the answers because no one does. I am an experienced expert in making such plans and volunteer my time, that means without compensation, to make a proper plan with the cooperation of the board and the people who possess relevant information. It gets technical, but Kensington is relatively simple compared to the hundreds of plans I've made in this form. It would not take that long. Thank you.
My name is David Bergen, and although I have already written to the board, I was asked to speak as well by other members of the community. You received a variety of mail from Marilyn Stolman, Mabry Benson, Jim Watt, Kevin Patty, Aaron Shane, and others regarding, in part, these items. One is the inadvisability of approving any MOU until we know what our future financial commitments really are. Signing up an interim GM COP when we really do not need a COP in a department that is already overloaded with supervising personnel. We have 5 supervising personnel and 5 officers. That's just not right. I have met Kevin Hart, and he appears to be a very decent person. However, we do not need to offer him or any other retired officer the kind of package we are offering based on inflated package Harmon received. Where are the promised cost savings of hiring retired officers? Have you done any studies to show the savings? And if so, what are those savings? These are questions that need to be answered. I'm going to remove the parts that don't have anything to do. Yes, there's a question as to why we're still considering the same MOU that was derived with questionable financials and with an officer representing the KPOA who has been disgraced. This MOU doesn't consider the costs that we cannot afford, which it compares us to actual cities, and it doesn't consider the enormous costs of the retirement and healthcare burdens it imposes on us. No one else gives the kind of healthcare benefits to retirees that we appear to do. Finally, Anna Shane is unable to attend tonight, so I've printed copies of her correspondence to you to make sure that it is included in the record of this evening. I've given Lynn a copy. And I have extra copies if anybody here would like to see it or hasn't seen it, I'm next door. Thank you for considering my comments and those you have received from others mentioned above. And I do appreciate all the work that you guys put in to make this possible. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Terrace, Kensington resident for about 25 years. I have been active in trying to get, for example, traffic considerations looked at for all of this period with great success. But tonight, what I'd like to talk about is transparency. This was one of the things in the last election that was supposed to be something of importance that was going to change this community. It doesn't appear that this is occurring. I read with dismay the Toombs Welch article in the Outlook. Was that article and what it contained a consensus of the board? If not, why not? Were dissenting voices to these positions given voice in the Outlook? Were they invited? If not, why not? Now, we can't blame our former editor, he's gone. But it's my impression that the Outlook continues in the same vein, being a propaganda rag for the majority. Now, if we're going to have transparency, that means all members of this board need to have voice, and not only the majority.
Could I ask you please to save the rest of the comment for the public meeting? This has nothing to do with the closed session.
The MOU. About 65 years ago, I used to love to play kick the can. I was when I was a kid. In doing an agreement with financial ramifications that we have, that it has, we better start acting as adults, and we better start using realistic numbers and not imaginary numbers. Okay? Thank you.
Gail Feldman with the Kensington Property Owners Association, and I'll keep my comments very brief. And this is in regards to the MOU with the Police Officers Association. Again, the Property Owners Association has been addressing you on this issue now for the last 6 months. And we're very pleased that you've been studying the MOU further instead of jumping to adopt it back in December. But again, we continue to caution you that the financial analysis that you just completed, the work that we've done as an organization continues to show that the MOU really can't be supported financially in the district. And I know that there's some discussion again about perhaps shortening it for 2 years with the same terms. I'm not really sure what you're discussing, but we're concerned about the movement forward on this current MOU as it's structured. We believe that we've now brought in additional legal and labor support to help you look at it. We hope that you continue to work with your council on that and not move forward on this MOU. And we really strongly urge you to vote it down, actually, and begin negotiations at the table again. Thank you.
So let me ask you a question. Did you survey KPO members when you say we?
No, this is the board, the board, yes, thank you. Yes. But I will say that subsequent to the letter that we sent out earlier this year, the meeting that we held in May, our membership has continued to grow. And now we're over 375 members, so just let you know.
That's what I heard.
Yes, thank you.
Celia Congress. I am here to urge the board not to take action on the MOU. And I recall that a few months ago, I heard at a board meeting, and I have not missed a single one, and I think you all know that. Chuck stated, Director Toombs stated, that he really wanted to hear from the public. Wanted the public to weigh in on what it wanted in terms of police services, what they were willing to pay for, and that it might in fact be necessary to cut some of the members, the staff on the police department. And I know that there was to be an ad hoc committee formed that was to engage the public, was to have some direction with long-term planning of the district, and also to have public town hall meetings. I haven't yet seen any of that started. Now, I really recognize that you're all volunteers and that you work other jobs and you have a lot to deal with. But I urge you not to commit us to an MOU that will make it difficult for us to change, to negotiate, to do anything else in the future until we have all of the information on what the community wants and also the proper statistics. And other people have already mentioned that. I also want to point out that now that we have changed council, we now have a labor negotiator who is working with the board, and I would certainly hope that the labor negotiator has a chance to weigh in on whatever is to happen with a new agreement with the officers. Our board, lest anybody forget, and I haven't heard anybody mention this, that it was just a little more than 2 years ago that the police officers were given a 3% salary increase across the board, and we asked nothing from them. We did not get any concessions from them in terms of providing, donating to, contributing to PERS, and that question was asked multiple times, why the officers were not making some contribution to PERS. We simply gave them 3%, and that is still in effect as far as I can tell, because that contract, I think, just continues to go until that agreement continues to go until we make some other change. I mentioned at the meeting last week when the officers, the candidates for general manager COP were being interviewed, that the police department is top-heavy. And David mentioned that we have 5 high-ranking officers, now 4 because Chief Harmon is not with us right now, but we have had 5 high-ranking police officers supervising 5 ordinary patrol people. Something is out of whack. I believe that we can safely eliminate 1 position, probably more than that, because we have 1 officer who is a sergeant, and that sergeant is on loan to the Northern California Computer Crimes Task Force. He's on loan there for half-time. We have another sergeant who is assigned to WestNet, the West County Narcotics Task Force, and that person was assigned anywhere from 25 to 50%.
I believe that's been shut down, and that program is so
Good. I'm very glad because, in my opinion, we should not have had that. We we should not have been engaged in that. And I do want also to say that not only during Chief Harmon's time, we were not only paying the fee for being part of WestNet, we were providing an officer's time, and in addition, that officer was billing his time with overtime and got paid in the space of 15 months. He was given 100 hours of overtime. That's billed at time and a half. I wanted also to mention that retirees from the fire department do not get medical benefits at all. They can purchase them through a group plan. They are not provided by the fire department. Wanted to say here that I believe that the mismanagement in the police department that we have seen could well have been avoided if we had had a separation of the general manager's functions and the police and the COP's jobs, and how that separation occurs is for somebody, the public perhaps, to decide. I also want to state that I have looked at overtime for a 15-month period from January 2014 through March 2015, and noticed that there was a disproportionate assignment of overtime, and that 2 officers got the bulk of the overtime, 2 officers got essentially none of it, and 1 officer got a lot of it, but he seemed to have been filling in for personnel who were missing. It seems to me that a disproportionate assignment of overtime, paying at 1.5 times ordinary salary, is demoralizing for the other officers in the department. And somebody has to take a careful look at that. And my last comment, and very briefly, I wish to say that in glancing through the compensation packet that is being offered to the interim general manager, chief of police, and please don't take this personally, you're a fine gentleman, I think you're well qualified for doing the job. I think that that compensation package is too rich.
Mabry Benson here. I was going to read this whole thing, but I realized that was outrageous. I posted it on Nextdoor. I think most of you probably already read it. I have a hard copy, and I've asked for a copy to go in the next, whatever Lynn told me it's going to be in. But just a couple of comments. We should not be making any contract at this point until we fully understand our financial situation. I do not think that analysis we got last month was sufficient. This is what most of what this covers, so I won't go over the details, but we need a more realistic evaluation because we are on the edge of, maybe for a couple years we're okay, but just barely, but we are, beyond that, we are mostly deficit. I'm sorry that Jim Watt is here, but he posted, I wasn't paying any attention to the, it's called the MOU with the new Chief of Police General Manager. I think he had some very good points, and I'll just say I agree with Jim and Celia's comment that it is a slightly rich contract. 30 hours of training, well, you know, he's only here for 9, 12, maybe 15 months. Okay, I have a copy for you.
Anna Suri-Ortiz, Kensington resident for 17 years. I want to start off by just thanking everybody for their hard work, because I can't imagine at the end of my workday coming and doing this as well, so I thank you for your service to Kensington from the bottom of my heart. I have 3 comments to make. If for some reason I'm not understanding this and I'm making a comment I shouldn't be at this time, just do this and I'll stop. New to some of this, guys. But I have a vested interest, given I want my daughter to inherit a house in a community that people respect. My first thing was about the MOU. Don't pass it, chuck it, start fresh. Even within 2 years, even with the, I think there was a 2-year proposal of doing it for 2 years. Doesn't seem like it's gonna work. Start fresh. Second comment is about the police association. I have a question. Is now the okay time to ask that question?
I think you better ask in open session.
I will wait for open session. My third comment is just in general a feeling about, somebody mentioned about transparency. And I think many months ago when a lot of us rallied together and came forward, there was media and helicopters and everybody was talking about badge for badge and all these sensational things. We came here and we felt it's a fresh beginning. There's going to be transparency. There's a board that's going to all work together, play in the sandbox together in the sense of community. And I guess my concern, it's been several months now, and I guess I don't see that completely. And I'm just hoping it's going to change because I think we had an opportunity to really look at ourselves as a community and our governance and see things change. And I hope that everybody's going to be included in all decisions that are made for this community and not just a few. Thank you.
So I just want to respond to that last comment. Everybody is included in all decisions that are made. And the comment about the outlook, I think it was clarified that that was written by 2 of the board members, not all the board members. Now, it may be a practice that we better have it reviewed by all the board members, but part of the object is for communications. And we don't can submit them to the outlook we want to see. But all decisions are made by all board members.
But I think what we want to know is that if I read something in the Outlook that says the board, the assumption automatically is the entire board has either blessed it, looked at it, done something, not 1 or 2 people, possibly. And because that carries a lot of power with it for people who might not be as well informed to say, wow, our whole board believes in this, I'm going to stand behind this. But if it's only a few people and not all perspectives are given, that's a hard pill to swallow, Mr.
So I just
West.
didn't read the outlook article as saying the board is doing this, the board is doing that. Maybe I just read it.
Okay.
And I didn't see it before.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to apply every look. You people want transparency and you want information. There is nobody writing articles for the outlook now. Chuck and I, Chuck did most of the work, took our time to try and write people what is going on at the board meetings. We were very careful to say it's just what we think is happening, but that's better than silence in my view. Doing our best to keep the public informed about what's going on here because there is no pipeline right now. That's why we did it.
But as a board member, I would like to email heads up that that article is coming out.
And
So-
and also there's no reason why you couldn't have, asked each of us a few words to offer to it and then advocate
We
that.
have that a special meeting, we have that a meeting.
Well, put it in the
Yeah.
Happy to attend.
Not happy to attend, I have a day job.
Yeah, I'm not either, I'm ready to go. Forget it, you can have silence.
And that's what you do, is just to rotate the job through.
And I have also, I'll let you know, I sent an email this morning to Forrest and Tom Dean, and they said, I said I would be responsible for the July article of the Outlook.
That would be
Well, no one
great.
consulted with me about whether I was going to write the article. You see what it degenerates into.
The point here is, well, I mean, there's a public checks and balances. You were all at the last meeting, and I defy you to find anything that was inaccurate about what we reported on. And the next meeting will be Michelle's article and see if she was accurate. That's the checks and balances.
Yes, someone else right there.
I think that brings up a real concern when you say you defy anybody to see an inaccuracy. And I don't feel like starting that over again because I'm not supposed to, but there were some inaccuracies in there.
No,
And there are other people that might speak to it, but I can't.
Look, I'm gonna, I can't guarantee you, hold on, Chuck, I can't guarantee you that everything we write is gonna be, exactly what everybody else would think is the truth. We did our best to relay what happened at the meeting because we wanted to give the public some indication of what went on, because that's better than, what's the alternative? Silence.
Or next door.
Or next door.
So I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment. I really think, and I actually wrote a note to all the board members, that we worked really hard to do a collaborative process for the selection of the chief of police. And we were quite successful in working together as a board. I worked with Rochelle. We had a very good team spirit going on. When the time came to write the press release, Vanessa and I worked together. So let's not create issues where none exist. We are trying our best to move forward, to learn about how to work with each other, with new members on the board, and to the extent that we make mistakes or have missteps, we're going to have to forgive each other, and you're going to have to forgive us. So I appreciate the input, I really do, but I think we need to assume good intentions. You'll hear me say this over and over again. As someone who's litigated for a living, I can tell you, you get nowhere by assuming bad intention. You have to assume good intention and then be proven wrong. So
I have a different take
if
on
we
this.
can go forward,
And we can.
excuse me for 1 second, just finish. If we can go forward with the idea that we're trying to work together and trying to do our best to bring as much transparency as possible within the limits of the law, please know that that's at least my spirit, and I believe the spirit of my fellow workers. Thank you.
Sorry. It's not whether or not we think it's right or wrong. It's that the public has a perception that something smells funny. And that's what really matters in local governments. And if it makes people uncomfortable, if it makes people question our integrity or intent, then we need to just change course and try it a different way. In a way that, I don't know, cultivates some semblance of trust and belief in what we're doing. So I agree with the intention, but I think it's the method or the channels that are being used are creating a little more distrust than I agree believe is necessary. So let's try another way.
I just want to make one observation here. I mean, everybody writes to some form. I've seen several people write to next door. I never try to tell you what you have on next door. And to me, the outward system of the form. And when you write to anybody, people are looking at you as Vanessa Cordova, she's on the district board. Gillette, she's on the district board. I wonder who they're writing for, themselves or the district. Now, I guess it doesn't matter if it's truthful stuff. That's fine. But I mean, I'm not going to sit there and censor anybody when they want to write. I encourage you guys to write wherever you want, whatever you want, and then let the public judges harass you. And if they find that you're misrepresenting us, you'll know. If they find you're telling the truth, you'll know that too. To pre-select, because Lynn and I chose to write what I thought was a very informative article. It sways the news so that nothing gets written, because we'll always be afraid that we'll step on someone's toes. And then no one's informed about anything. And that makes no sense at all. That just, I mean, are you going to tell the editor of the Outlook that his or her article, the new editor's article, is anywhere less objective because he or she took a certain perspective?
Rochelle and I have talked to board members of KPPC, and they agreed that, this might not be a good path for us. And they offered, equal play time for, 3 directors who haven't been in the last 2 months in the office.
Believe me, I don't mind if any of you write a piece of the Outlook. I really don't. As long as it's truthful and accurate and there's free of bias, please just tell the community what we're doing at our meetings. That's all we tried to do with the first 2 pieces we composed. I just want people to know what we're doing. And there's no other way to cover it unless there's someone from the press. And I can't count on the Contra Costa County Times to give us unbiased news, I'll tell you.
So if anyone feels, like, because you shook your head, and I think you should, that you felt that there was something in our article that was not correct, then you should share that with one or all of us. Because we should know that. If you thought that they misrepresented something. I read it, I didn't see anything that was misrepresented. But I may not have the same issue.
Can we move this to the items that are before closed session and continue this in public?
Yeah, I'd like to go to
There
that.
was one comment I need to respond to. Having the opinion of 2 board members is not better than nothing. Because in this climate, over the past several years, where we have had basically the Outlook being a propaganda rag, to have that continued by the old majority does not do the board service and does not do the public service. If you're going to get the consensus out of what happened in the meeting and have it all together, everybody look at it, and everybody can like the same thing.
All right, at this time, I think we're going to finish commentary with the closed session. We'll see you about an hour, hopefully shorter. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 1st meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. This is a rescheduled regular meeting. Normally we would have it on June 11th, but we voted at the last meeting to move the date up to today. And the reason we did that is because Pat Gillette will not be present June 11th, and we wanted a full board for the issues we're going to decide tonight. First I'm going to take roll call. Director Sheris-Watt.
Here.
Director Toombs.
Here.
Director Cordova.
Here.
Director Gillette.
Here.
I'm Len Welsh, President. We have a full board present. We finished a closed session, and I hope this is not too loud. Is everybody hearing okay? And it's not too loud? Very good. I'm unused to a sound system that works. It's shocking. Actually, technically, we're not really required to report out, but we did want to inform you. There may have been some confusion about how negotiations are taking place at this point with the police officers over the MOU. We just wanted to make it clear that on recommendation of council, they believe that there should be one member of the board present along with council when talking with representatives of the police association. So in case people had a different impression of how we're proceeding, I think there may have been some talk about it would just be a council-to-council negotiation. The way we are proceeding is to have council present, but also one board member present, and the board has agreed that Chuck Toombs should be in that role. A couple of announcements real quickly. We are planning a closed session meeting on the 16th of June to be held at 6 p.m. and that will be on the MOU. We are also planning for a public meeting on the 23rd of June at 6 p.m. To discuss a preliminary budget. Both of those meetings we're pretty sure are going to be held at the community center, but we'll get that up on the website as soon as we know for sure.
What did you say, the 23rd is about?
The 23rd is a public meeting to discuss the preliminary budget. We have some statutory requirements to get some budgetary issues resolved. We have to adopt a final budget by September 1st. We're a little bit behind our normal schedule because we've had so much turnover, as I think you're all aware. But basically, the first step at this point is for us to develop a preliminary budget, which we will air at the June 23rd public meeting, 6 p.m.
Will there be a finance committee before that?
There may well be. We need to work out whether we're going to do the finance committee before that or after that. There will be other meetings on the budget. This is just a preliminary meeting, and we don't anticipate a whole lot of detail about the MOU being worked out by then. So it might be wiser to have a finance committee meeting later, but we're looking into whether we are required to have one before, and we'll let you know. Okay, so at this time, I will take public comments. Anybody like to come up and comment? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the mic up here so people can be heard. If one of us needs to respond, we'll just have to come up here with you.
You can stay right here with me.
You're okay in your own way. Yeah. Excuse me. Well, we haven't voted yet on what his status is, but I'd be happy to introduce the candidate. Kevin, are you? I can't see you. Kevin Hart is the candidate we're looking at.
Welcome.
And I think there's pretty much universal agreement that he is an outstanding candidate. I mean, I've heard no negatives. We will be voting on the contract as part of this meeting later on. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Leonard Schwartzberg. I agree with Kevin Petty, and Pat Gillette insofar as, under the present circumstances, I do not believe there was any intent by the board to lack transparency. The present circumstances are the product of past circumstances. And as yet, unless there have been some somewhat recent changes, there are no structures within our official policies and procedures to deal with our present crisis that provide for what I'll call functional transparency. From what I've been hearing, the board has made a good choice for an interim chief of police. I'm being presumptuous here, I know. For an interim chief of police, and I welcome Chief Hart to the community. That said, though, I am accepting of and understanding of the process used. I'm not happy with the amount of functional transparency that has been available to the community at this time, leaving the past out of it. I've retired from collecting and thinking about specific data about the community, though I think it's critical to good government for the community to have it. I hope the board and the good folks who have stepped up, and that includes people I admire, will establish the structures to nurture participatory democracy in Kensington. In time, for the long-term decisions we are faced with. That's how good decisions are made. Thank you.
Anybody else, please step up.
My name is Andrew Gutierrez. For many years, I questioned the wisdom of the joint GM-COP position. I recently spoke to a person who was the CFO of a multi-billion-dollar operation about this. And he said this wasn't a problem. Wasn't a problem, provided the incumbent was a saint. I talked to Mr. Hart about this, told him about my concerns, and in speaking to him, he assured me he didn't have a halo, but it seemed like a very reasonable man. So I expressed my concerns to him. My concerns were that in this joint position, who is in charge? The GM side or the COP side? On the one side, they can hide behind Officer Bill of Rights, and on the other hand, they can hide behind the bureaucracy. Who's the boss? What measures will be put in place for reporting to give advice to the incumbent and to get guidance from him in dealing with important matters, such as some of the recent things we had occurred since last December. I won't call them again. Among these things are police misconduct, the fact that we're loaning officers to other jurisdictions and we're too small on the margin, the amount of investment we make in their time and in monies is just simply too great. I asked him to think about having the officers spend more time on the street, being visible, to further lower the crime statistics for our burg. I, for one, would like to see them engage the community and be more visible to patrol our streets and to control traffic. It's a request I've been making for many years, and I made earlier this afternoon. I was impressed by Mr. Hart's genuineness, his approachability, and I really wish him, if he becomes a successful candidate, the best luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Watt. I'd like to address my comments to the MOU that was proposed to this community back in the November-December timeframe. I think that without question, the most important element that was in that MOU was the concept of giving the officers a salary increase of 12% over 4 years, provided that they pick up an equivalent amount of their pension contributions. In presenting the proposed MOU during the November-December meetings, both Chuck Toombs and Pat Gillette stated that employees' paid pension contributions were included in the contract because by the year 2018, it will be required. However, both Chuck and Pat now acknowledge that the PEPTRA law does not make these contributions mandatory for existing employees. This changes the most basic premise of the contract, namely that employee pension contributions were mandatory and needed to be phased in by 2018. As I have pointed out at several board meetings, providing these employees with salary increases to compensate for their pension payments is not a simple matter of swapping a pension payment for a salary increase. This is because when these payments shift over to salary, they become part of the employee's final compensation package. The 12% salary increase over 4 years associated with the proposed MOU will increase total salaries by about $120,000 a year. And since pension contribution rates are about 40% of salary, this change will increase the district's pension obligation by about $50,000 a year. This means that if these officers retire at the age of 50, which they're entitled to do, and assuming 75% of their salary is pensionable, and that they live another 35 years, which is the expected life expectancy, the terms of this MOU will cost the district about another $1.3 million in future pension obligations. As a taxpayer, I do not want my money spent on providing even richer pension payments to these officers. And I suspect if the Kensington voting public understood the ramifications of the MOU as currently proposed, they would agree with me. If the board still feels employees should contribute to their pensions, then the offer should be a 3% employee paid contribution in return for a 2% salary increase. I get the feeling that some board members believe that the financial analysis prepared by Adam Benson of the Public Management Group suggests that the current MOU can be supported by the budget for the next 2 years. This view fails to acknowledge that Adam has identified a number of risks to this forecast. Here are 3 that are worth considering. First, it is assumed that CalPERS will reach their 7.5% annual target goal for the return on their invested capital. However, in talking with Kensington's CalPERS representative, I was told that with only 2 months left in the fiscal year, the fund is up just 4%. This possible 3.5% shortfall will require hikes in the next year's pension contribution rates. And if the stock market has a 20% correction, as many experts predict, the impacts on pension contributions will be much more severe. Second, we have some real discrepancies in the last 2 audit reports for retiree medical contributions. This contribution rate needs to be examined, and as it could go much higher. Third, we have an unknown cost associated with the upgrade of the community center. These costs and the need to make them in a timely manner could seriously alter these future budget projections. Finally, while we might all agree that having a contract with the officers is desirable, It is the board's responsibility to make certain that the choice is made on the basis of what makes sense for the citizens of Kensington. In my opinion, the proposed MOU makes no sense and should be rejected in favor of one that has a shorter term and conditions that are much more favorable to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Hassai, that's spelled Hacaj. I know it's an unusual spelling. I first of all just wanted to thank the board for getting us where we are today with the candidate that we have that is hopefully going to be confirmed. I think that was a pretty tough lift in a short amount of time, and especially want to acknowledge Pat and Michelle for the work that they did, and all the board members who I know, I'm sure, are working extremely hard. So I do want to acknowledge that and thank the board for that, in particular for where we are today with the current candidate. I hope that the new Chief of Police General Manager will have an ability to have a direct line to the community, will be able to converse with us, and I'm very curious to hear more about, I know he has a 100-day plan, which I'm sure he submitted to you. I hope that will be able to be shared by the candidate with the community. And I hope that we'll hear from the board either today or another time soon about what direction they're going to give this new Chief of Police / GM as far as objectives for the near and relative long-term for this particular candidate. I do think it was an example of a good process. I think that the fact that the resumes were available to the community at that meeting, that residents were able to ask questions and be there was terrific. And I do hope that we will pick up on something I remembered from the February meeting, and I think somebody might have mentioned it earlier today, the example of the good process to have a full airing over the mix of those two positions, which I think many in the community have expressed concerns about having them mixed, having an inherent potential real problem in just managing it both for the board and for that person in that position having to manage all that. So I do want to encourage, I think it was Vanessa and Chuck, I'm sorry to use your first names, to have that process happen, because I thought that the example of the candidate process was really good, and there is a lot of continued desire by the community to have good dialogue, reasoned input, and kind of thorough examining of the various issues and points of view. Lynn is gone, I wanted to extend obviously sympathies to her on her broken arm, and I understand that there's she's talked about some procedures being put in place over the near term, because I know in her absence, emails about the agenda were not sent out to the community, I don't think, and minutes may not be produced as fast, and this is still very obviously central to the functioning of the board and for the community, and I'm glad to hear from her that there's hopefully a plan being worked out to make those things come along as she is recovering. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Carl, would you like to make your budget comments? But there wasn't any fiscal in the agenda packet. Just a joke. The comment about the budget, preliminary budget isn't here. Well, I thought we had a general manager on duty from, was it February through May? And isn't that one of his principal jobs to prepare that budget? So why were we paying him all that time if he didn't do that major part of his job?
Good evening. I'm Carl Quigger. Most of you are used to me talking about finances, but tonight I came up to talk about something different. I would like to thank the board. You must have spent a number of nights and many, many, many hours for the last 2 and 3 months talking about all kinds of things. And I think for that you deserve a pat on the back. But I looked at Robert Rules of Orders, and it says you may not touch a board member during board meetings. So if you want the pat on the back, you either have to meet me outside or you have to come by the house. Anyway, thank you very much for the work you have done.
That's a tough act to follow. Who knew Carl had a sense of humor? We all do. I'm Steve Bates, in case anybody doesn't know that. This is an interesting process. I do appreciate the time the board put in this process, but I hear a culture change. Everybody goes, COP, GM, COP, GM. You know, this is really about the GM. I mean, we don't need a chief of police. Yeah, it's Gucci to say we have one. Wow, we have a chief of police in Kensington. But affordability, okay, that's the big question. Most of the issues that have come up in the past have been, I'm sorry, don't mean to spit into the microphone, have been management oriented. From the suits with employees being poorly handled, or there's been several suits involving employees. There's been alleged police activities that have been so stellar, etc. This isn't about a chief of police. It's not about a guy who's going to carry a badge and handcuffs and drive around in a police car. It's about a guy who's managing the police. It's always mentioned, well, there's a conflict of interest. Not really. He's a manager first. There was a question earlier about, well, if he's got two hats, who's the boss? It should be one hat. He's the GM. He's the manager, not the chief of police. We've got plenty of great officers in Kensington. They don't need to be told what to do. They need to be guided in how they do it, which is a managerial thing. They need to be supported. The questions about the procedures manual came up many months ago. Well, what happens if a guy has to respond, has a problem, and he has to go to the very guy he has a problem with, the chief of police? Well, if he's a manager, that's not an issue, okay? There should be a guy that reports to you guys. You guys need, what's that? Sorry. Guys. There should be somebody that reports to the board. You guys meet, well, until recently, you're wearing us out with all these meetings, but you're supposed to meet once a month. Now, you can't possibly be a day-to-day management group, and you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to have what is that word again? Manager doing it on all levels. All I see, and no offense to the candidates and the man sitting here, he could be a very good manager, but that would be his job, not chief of police, not driving around in a car, not wearing a uniform, doesn't need a badge, we all know who he is. By the time whoever's hired gets hired, we'll know who they are. So what does he need to do? He needs to manage. And I haven't heard that. I keep hearing COP and then GM kind of mentioned in a sideline. And I appreciate the work, but man, it just doesn't seem like this is going to go to the direction that we're having the issues. So, budget, somebody mentioned before, where's the budget? That's a manager's job now, isn't it? Okay, and again, one of my cautions is, nowadays, with the community getting older, and I don't mean the people, I mean the streets and things, there are issues coming up that the neighbors need help with. And the managers may need to field these issues, safety issues in the community, sidewalks that aren't done right, or there are safety problems. You're going to call the county as a neighbor and bitch to them, and they're going to say, what'd you say? So it's going to change a little, and the guy's got to be able to wear multiple hats. The other thing is the cost. I read what the package is, and that's more than we're paying the guy now. Indirect money. His retirement's there, but that's postponed. This is direct money. This is month-to-month money. So I'm a little concerned with that as well, given the scope of the work. And I haven't really got a good definition of what the scope is. And I did notice that somewhere in 2007, the MOU was written as the GM has to be a police officer, which I thought was a little strange. Because before we did, William Bray was not a police officer. William Bray managed community for quite a while, so.
Excuse me, Mr. Bates, you're kind of running your 5-minute limit. So allow us to finish up.
He said I ran my limit. I have to shut up now.
Hey, Stevensdale, I just didn't understand the comment about the GM not providing a 5-year budget. I have one.
Fiscal year 15-16? For fiscal year 15-16?
Yes,
That has to be,
We need to approve a budget every year.
before we commence the fiscal.
but one was provided by the former GM COP before you left office.
We reviewed the previous one, but we have not made a formal proposal yet for the next fiscal year.
Maybe it's Dr. Dell showing the 5-year projections that Greg Harmon produced for us, and that is in effect a budget.
Please use the microphone. We can't hear you.
Del, those are projections, and we need to approve an operating budget publicly before we are authorized to spend money.
Yeah, let me restate the question if I can, and then the answer. Dr. Delp was saying that we did get budgetary review from the chief. He had a 5-year projection. What we did not go over was a proposed budget, a proposed actual budget for fiscal year, the new fiscal year beginning July 1st this year.
Which is what I was referring to, the proposed budget for the upcoming year.
Right. We're still putting that together. Sad to say. But we will meet our statutory obligations. All right, so I think...
Len, I have a question. I have some questions on old business item.
Come on up.
Old business number 2, should I wait?
Can you come up?
Wait, yeah.
Oh, okay. A question for later, okay.
Old business item 2, you want me to wait? Yeah, thank you.
All right, so, board, would you like to comment, Vanessa?
I have a few updates. Supervisor John Joya made a nice announcement today on social media, and I'm going to read that so I don't paraphrase here. It's with regard to the gateway sign that greets you at Arlington and Armont, I believe. Supervisor Joya wrote, "If the Kensington community wants to redesign its sign, I'm glad to get County Public Works to make and install a new sign for you." And this was met by enthusiasm, as you can imagine, including offers to help design and dig holes and reposition new signs. So if you're interested in that, I would suggest you contact Kate Rauch at Supervisor Joy's office.
Finally, the sign gets corrected. It's my issue.
Yes, it's as someone said, it's underwhelming. Okay, so I have an update on KMAC business. The Kensington Municipal Advisory Council, as you know, oversees a lot of development and land use issues here in town. When I left the board, that created a second vacancy on that governing body, and Patrick Tahara, who is the president of KMAC, wrote to me to state that they are currently in an interview process with approximately 5 candidates who they'll be interviewing this month, and that's a county appointment. Supervisor Joya takes the recommendation of Patrick Tahara, and then the candidate is appointed by the full board of supervisors in Martinez, and so there should be some news about that in a month or so. And then, as parents will know, this marks the end of the academic school year at Kensington Hilltop. I had tea with Marty Westby. Mrs. Westby runs the KCC Summer Day Camp, which begins next week. And she explained some of the amazing program offerings at a very low cost. Things that include, let's see, rock climbing, tennis, arts and crafts, what have you, gymnastics, barbecues every Friday. It sounds like a good time to me. She also mentioned that If anyone would like to make a small donation to this program, they need cans of spray sunscreen, SPF 30, because they go through several cans to kind of coat these kids before they go out and play. So if any of you have a few dollars to buy some spray sunscreen for kids, they would happily accept that donation, and I thought that was a very sweet ask. So you can see Mrs. Westby about that, and if any families would like to enroll for camp, you still have a few days. The recreation program continues to grow. I think they have maybe 18 more spots, and as always, they offer financial aid, which is self-funded by many of the generous families in Kensington who always add a little extra when they pay their tuition, which is lovely. So that's my update for tonight.
Vanessa?
Yes.
What's the times of the summer school?
Yes, summer camp runs from 9 to 5 with an hour of before care from 8 to 9 and an hour of after care from 5 to 6 for working families. And a snack is included. And every Friday they have a full-out barbecue, and parents usually join kids.
Yeah, the only reason I mention this is because that area is also used by dog owners, on leash followers, of course. And so it'd be nice to be able to put something out there, because Marty said she didn't want her dogs in there, but just not between 8 and 5, so it's between 8 and 6. So if you can keep the dog owners kind of under control, then there won't be any problems between two entities.
Yeah, and this is that's sort of outside my, and above my pay grade, thankfully, but you know Marty, don't you know Mrs. Westby?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it to her. Will you do that for me, Steve? Okay, I'm going to delegate. Look at that, I'm delegating. Here you go.
I want to thank the people who made comments tonight, thanking the board. I thank everyone making their comments, but particularly those who thanked us. That is greatly appreciated, and I want to express my thanks to the other members of the board, and Rochelle in particular. This process of choosing the quote-unquote winning candidate, hopefully, for the GM police, chief of police position, was on a very expedited schedule, and it required everyone to work cooperatively with each other and quickly, and to make sure that we got as much input as we could. And so I'm glad to hear that at least some people were pleased with the process. I think we had an incredible group of candidates, which we were very pleased about, and we were able to make, I hope, a very good selection. So thank you to my fellow board members for working cooperatively and collaboratively on that process. And then I want to note my son works for Mayor de Blasio, and he sent me an email today because he monitors these things, saying that Kensington has made it because we are apparently among the 30 safest suburbs in the Bay Area, according to SF Gate. So, yeah. So congratulations to us.
Yeah, that's number 10. That's how we were ranked.
He had a few sarcastic comments to make about that, which I won't read.
Pat is really being way too humble. I have to tell you, Rochelle and she did the most amazing heavy lift, doing this candidate process, doing it openly, managing the public comment, getting the information out there, and we have a fabulous candidate. I can't say enough about how qualified this man is, Kevin Hart, and I think you're going to see a sea change in how the community is managed, and I do mean managed. The point was made that we were in the habit of saying COP, general manager, but the fact of the matter is Mr. Hart is a very, very competent manager, and I think you're going to, and a very competent communicator, and I think you're going to see a world of difference in how things are run in this community in the next several months. So I just want to say once again, thank you both to Rochelle and to Pat for this amazingly heavy lift that they managed in such a short time.
I wanted to add my thanks as well to both Rochelle and Pat. They did a lot of hard work that nobody else here can really appreciate because you weren't there to watch it. I also wanted to build on what Pat said. My daughter sent me this 30th safest suburbs in the Bay Area. And just so you know, Kensington was number 10, Atherton was number 12, Fairfax was number 14, Lafayette was number 15, Albany was number 26, number 7, Orinda, number 5, Moraga, number 3, Tiburon, number 2, Belvedere, and number 1, Hillsborough.
We got some work to do.
So we have some work to do, but in any case, this is available on sfgate.com. It's a great piece. My daughter thought it was enough of an interest to send to me. Thanks to everybody for making it a safe town. And thanks again to Pat and Michelle for all your hard work. It was a real pleasure watching you find such an outstanding candidate. And hopefully, by the end of the night, you'll still think that.
All right, the Parks Building Committee met this month, and last month, it's already June 1st, here we are. And we prepared an RFP for a structural engineer. We're looking for a seismic analysis for the community center youth hut. That job, we've received several bids, and the committee will review those bids and make a recommendation to the board. Unfortunately, in the turmoil of the last couple of weeks, my agenda was not posted, so that meeting that was supposed to occur on June 3rd will be postponed until the 8th. And I will let the committee members know the agenda will be posted on the website, and we welcome your attendance. I wanted to quickly cover, I apologize, this was also not included in your packet, but after I read it, I will be happy to, it will go up on the website, and we will be happy to field questions. A few months ago, in March, I took up the task of providing information on data security survey with some team members. You will notice that my team members are the gentlemen over here, all electronic devices on, which should give you great comfort. So it was myself, Ryan Anderson, Rick Artis, and the generous time of Sergeant Kevin Huey. At the March 2015 KPPCSD board meeting, an informal request was made to gather information regarding physical information and data security for the KPPCSD. The goals. The board wanted, 1, to gain a better understanding of the current state of the police department security, 2, to gain a better understanding of the current security state, and 3, to understand if any urgent matters needed attention. The board intended to use the information to plan and prioritize ongoing physical information and data security decisions. The work to date. We have met twice since the March board meeting and spent 6 hours assessing the building. That is the public safety building. Physical components, understanding IT and data process, and compiling a list of focus areas that broadly fell into 2 groups. Those were physical security and information and data security. The team used a common sense approach and focused on each group separately. Our feedback is that consensus from all the participants in our group is that the KPD security is quite acceptable. While there are areas for improvement and exploration, there appears to be no cause for major alarm. Sergeant Huey is proactive, engaged, and knowledgeable in KPD IT and data security matters. He serves on the Northern California Computer Crimes Task Force. It was noted that the KPD has been audited by the Department of Justice. We also effectively leverage IT and security infrastructure from larger jurisdictions. Richmond actually covers most of our IT needs. After evaluating more than 50 focus areas across the 2 groups, several focus areas for potential improvement and/or further study were flagged. If any focus items had surfaced that were seen as urgent, immediate, or beyond this team's capabilities, they would have been flagged for immediate action by the KPD and reported to the board. As of now, no urgent critical items of this nature have been identified. So our next steps are that Sergeant Huey already implemented several small improvements that we noted within the department. We were going to offer the rest of the board a detailed briefing, and then we would like to meet with the new GM, COP, sometime this month, and solicit feedback on the next steps. We want to note that they were prepared by members of the Kensington community, these recommendations, excuse me, were prepared by members of the Kensington community in a volunteer capacity. We do not present ourselves as subject matter experts, but rather as generalists applying general common sense and the test of the reasonable man. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thank you, Ryan and Rick. We really appreciate it. Master Sergeant Hull there is sitting all alone at the table. You may have noticed that Lynn Walter was here earlier with her arm in a sling. She does a lot to make the trains run in this community, and she was brave enough to try to come to this meeting, but she's still in quite a lot of pain and healing, so she had to leave. I just wanted to say that she just broke her arm, what was it, 2 weeks ago? She had surgery last week, and she's already trying to come into the office. She can't drive because she's on pain meds, so she gets somebody to drive her there, and she's already trying to get back into the saddle as soon as she can. She's a wonderful trooper. Master Sergeant Hull is going to be having some new pressure for the next several weeks as the top police, well, he's the Master Sergeant. He's effectively going to be the person in charge of the police until the candidate gets sworn in, and we'll have a little bit more detail on that in a few minutes. Master Sergeant Hull, do you have any comments right now? If you do, I'll bring the microphone over. You sure? Okay.
I can project. Just happy to serve in any capacity.
We're very happy to have you. I have to say, we've been in touch quite a lot, and he's been offering, anything I can do to help, please let me know. And he's always been there when we need help, so he'll do a great job for us. So I think with that, we move on to approval of the consent calendar, which you will see is rather slim. Question in the back.
Can we close public comment? Because I had something I wanted to ask on stage.
Come on up and ask.
It won't be long.
Hi, I'm Chris Hall, and I just wanted to ask about, there's a lot of talk about the memo of understanding, and I know that back in February, Vanessa and Lynn kind of formed an ad hoc committee to kind of clarify some of the things that are going on with that. And I'm hoping that the community will have more dialogue with regards to that, and that before it's voted on, that we will have a chance to have some input in that regard. What?
The MOU?
Yeah, the MOU. Isn't that what it's called? Memo of Understanding? Okay, great. And, I'd like to welcome the proposed interim chief to our community. And I'm hoping that maybe the board and the community can put together a chance for us to really meet him, sit around, talk, and exchange ideas and thoughts on that, so we can put a face on it, really. And I think that's something I look forward to. So thank you.
And I think you're going to get just that. All right, so like I said, the consent calendar is rather slim. We're lacking minutes. We're lacking a lot of stuff, Lynn's injury, and some other factors. So I apologize for that. I think we'll be more back to normal next meeting. So did anybody want to comment on or remove any item from the two-item consent calendar? If not, do I have a motion to adopt?
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we move on to district old business, and I'm sure the item everybody's been waiting to hear about most. Pat or Rochelle, would you like to brief the board?
So we have the pleasure of having Kevin Hart, who is the final last standing candidate for the position of General Manager, Chief of Police. We asked, the board at its last closed session gave direction to our attorneys and asked them to negotiate a contract with Mr. Hart for the period of time that the board had authorized. The period of time we've authorized is 9 months with the possibility of an extension. And the reason for that time period is to ensure that we have sufficient amount of time to reconsider what the structure of the community district should look like, whether we want to reconfigure it, whether we want to have split the position, whether we want to merge, whatever the possibilities are. We're going to talk about that later. But we thought that we needed at least that much time for someone to get in and be able to sort of dig in their heels and guide us through this next period. And so we gave direction to our council around the terms of the contract that we hope they would be able to negotiate with Mr. Hart. We gave him a very short time frame, and John Holtzman, who's here tonight, was able to meet with Mr. Hart and come up to a proposed contract, which is part of the agenda packet. So we've had a chance to discuss that in our closed session, and do you want to take public comments on it now, or do you want to talk about it? Yeah, there is one change that we would like to propose. The way the contract is currently written, it can only go into effect if Mr. Hart is able to perform both the GM position and the chief of police position, because that's what we were assuming would happen. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as it does benefit the community, before someone can assume the duties of the chief of police, they have to go through a pretty rigorous background check. And that includes all kinds of things that they look into. That can't be accomplished in the short amount of time that we have. So what we're proposing is to amend the current contract, and we would direct our lawyers to come up with language to reflect this intent that would allow us to retain Mr. Hart as the general manager with the intent to hire him also as the chief of police as soon as he passes the background check. We anticipate that background check process will be done sometime in the middle of July, if not before. Question why it takes so long, that's because there's a lot that's entailed in doing that, because we all ask that question as well. So with that exception to the current language, we would otherwise open discussion on the contract, I guess, among the board.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, and I have to apologize for the posting. The contract that was posted referred to an Exhibit A. Some might have been David, I'm not sure, pointed out to me that there was no Exhibit A posted with it, and I apologize for that. It's the same Exhibit A that exists with the former General Manager, Chief of Police's contract, and the one that was in the job notice. The job notice itself referred to that Exhibit A as here are the duties of the. Yeah, I mean, so there's nothing new there. There's no change in the duties. It's just a continuation of the same position on a short-term basis until, as Pat said, we work out what final structure we want to have.
I'm sorry, Pat. So, as I understand it, and I would like General Counsel to provide us some guidance. What Pat is proposing, and I think what we'll all stipulate to here, is simply a friendly amendment to what's posted on the agenda, which is to execute the contract with the proviso that we have a change in terms of the immediate appointment as general manager and then appointment and swearing in as chief of police, subject to clearance of the background check. Is that right, Mr. Earl? A friendly amendment?
Yes, so there should be a formal motion made at some point. There may be public comment about this item, so perhaps after public comment, a motion would be made, and if it passes, then we will amend the contract consistent with the direction that we get from the board tonight.
So people can follow this. It's paragraph 2C that would be amended. And who's made the proposal as an amendment? Yes, I probably want to see if there's any comment. So
would anybody like to comment now on the proposed contract adoption?
Yeah, sorry I didn't do my homework. So I was just looking through this document, and there is a retirement clause in here, which that was one of our goals, not to be locked into a retirement process, but that's okay. What that kind of bugs me is
Steve, can I just address that to get off the table?
No.
There's a retirement clause in there because it's required by law. He doesn't have a choice. Okay.
Cool, thanks. 2 complete uniforms, related gear, and safety equipment. Again, written more for a chief of police than for a general manager. All except for the guy that we're getting rid of, none of them wore a uniform. So I'm kind of going again, the direction seems to be for chief rather than GM. And, you know, he has lovely suits. So, you know, it's a more professional atmosphere. It's a general manager's side. What the community has kind of said, at least my neighbors, is that we want a guy who is not tied into the police themselves. So the uniform, although visual probably, is also, you know, sort of sets him into the police officer's side rather than the management side. That's, and again, it might just be visual, but it is something that I think bugs a lot of the neighbors. I mean, there's our police uniform, gun-toting, handcuff-toting folks that work on the street, and what we're requiring is a guy to be in an office to manage this whole thing again. So not really sure why that's in there, but oh well, that's just me. 5 minutes.
I'm okay.
Good evening again, Jim Mott. I did submit some comments on this police employment agreement by way of email to the board members on Sunday. And I don't want to go through all those comments, I just want to focus on 2. Specifically, Section 4 of the agreement states that the GM COP will be responsible for conducting labor negotiations. Personally, to me, this seems like a conflict of interest. And I would be concerned if, in fact, that was intended to imply that the GM COP would be conducting these negotiations that are forthcoming with the officers that report to him. So I think that particular area should be changed, and that function should not reside in the police, in the GM COP. Secondly, in Section 6B, there is reference to the fact that the district is going to be putting together goals and objectives, and they're going to be working with the police chief in that regard. I would like to hear from the board as to exactly how those goals and objectives are going to be put together, who are the parties that are going to handle that. I think that some members of the community should be involved in this. To my way of thinking, this is probably the most important aspect of this contract, in that those goals and objectives are going to set forth what we believe that this police chief should accomplish during his term in office, and the direction that we would like to take the police department. So I would like to hear from the board, number 1, do they actually intend to have the police chief handle labor negotiations? And number 2, who are the parties that are going to participate in this? Will there be any community involvement? How long will this take? And I guess those would be my 2 primary questions. Thank you very much.
Jim, before you leave, Jim, I never got your email. I didn't get any of your comments. I don't know if you sent it or not, but I never got them.
Did anybody get it? Oh.
Well, okay, that's 1 out of 5.
I found out that the possible reason is because when I looked at who I was sending it to, it said Chuck and no Toombs. So I entered the Toombs in the address setting, and maybe that's why you didn't get it. But I apologize. I'll be happy to send it over to you. Of course.
I'm not getting these emails, everybody says I'm sending them. David said something, I didn't get it.
Mr. Hudson?
Email address? The district email. Can't go wrong with that. See Toombs, you just can't go wrong.
Maybe I should wait here and you can tell me number one about.
Yes. Johnson, respond to
Hi, I'm John Holtzman. I'm labor negotiator / negotiator with police chiefs and GMs. So with respect to the question about labor negotiations and conducting labor negotiations, the reason why that is in there is to establish that it is a confidential position, and actually to establish that by doing that, essentially that it is an unrepresented position. The police chief will not be conducting the labor negotiations for the MOU, but there are many issues that arise in the course of just everyday existence in a police department that require changes, and many of those changes are bargainable. The impacts of those changes are bargainable. And so the chief will undoubtedly be involved if there are reorganizations or changes in safety practices and things like that. So that's why that provision is in there, and that's why I put it in there.
And then the second question.
Oh, so that's the second question. This is obviously a board issue, and I don't know that, but you address that.
That's not for you.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Hello again. Hey Chuck, I get a lot of emails. You want me to redirect some of them to you?
Yeah, sure.
Good.
I'd love to read your emails, Carl.
Okay, yeah, I know you do. I don't have any doubt that the board did the best job that they thought they could do. My concern is, I listened to the candidates several weeks ago sitting up here, and it seemed to me they all addressed the police issue. They talked about their history in police department and so on and so on. I think we need a manager. And the issue of the police chief and the general manager is sort of very complicated. From what I know, and I've lived here 20-some years, every police chief has always been sure that they never crossed this thin blue line. They stuck up for their police officers on everything that ever happened. I have found for a long time that the scheduling of the police department was terrible. And how bad it was, I never knew until the incident in Reno, when it turned out that we had 4 officers out of state, and we have 4 or 5 on site. So I really think that the financial issues of this district are important enough that we get a very, very good manager. And if any of the candidates said this up here several weeks ago, I didn't hear that. Everybody addressed the issue of the police department. We have 9 officers plus a chief. Doesn't take much to schedule 9 people. We have done a terrible job of scheduling people. We have run overtime consistently. We have comp time. Every time I talk to the chief, and I said, when I first came to the meeting, we had 5 and 6 officers at the meetings. And when I talked to him about it, he said, they are not on overtime. No, they are not, but they want comp time. And that's what we are paying for. So I'm looking for a manager, I'm looking for a hire of someone who is a good manager. And as most of you will know, I will speak up on financial issues anytime that I feel that somebody ought to speak up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Frank Rossi, and
and I've been a resident here in Kensington for more than 50 years. And I have spoken here before, mostly from the same standpoint that I'm going to again mention today. I've strongly felt all along that it was a bad mistake to combine the two positions of COP and general manager. I think there is an inherent conflict of interest between those two roles. And that's the reason why virtually every city community has two separate people doing it. And in fact, generally, it is clearly set forward that the relationship between those two can sometimes be antagonistic. They answer to different communities, and they have different kinds of responsibilities. Excuse me for that. So I think, however excellent our new combination, chief and general manager, may be, and I have every reason to suppose that he is excellent, he has a difficult task to deal with because there is a conflict of interest between these two roles. Normally, it is the city manager who hires the police chief and fires him if necessary. I don't see how he's going to be able to do that if it should prove necessary. How can he fire himself? I mean, it just can't be done. And so I'm sorry that the board saw fit to have to go along with this same lame situation that we've dealt with for many years. But I hope that at the end of this temporary regime, whatever the end may be, that we'll have two separate human beings with separate capacities and separate responsibilities, and that we will not make this mistake again. Thank you.
First, I want to thank everybody for your insights, your questions, and your criticisms, especially as we've gone through this process. As wonderful as praise is, we all like to be praised, your emails taking me to task and giving me your opinions are so valuable and incredibly important that we develop the governance that you want. So please continue. I don't shy away from that, even if I can't always, Dr. Lossie, do what you desire right away. There'd be more time, but believe me, I'm on the side of getting this right for our community. So criticism gladly taken. But I do want to answer Jim Watt's question about goals and objectives for the Chief of Police GM position. The way I would like to see it done is that we start gathering opinions, both as a board and in the community, for what direction, what questions and goals we would like to have answered throughout the month of June, and then maybe make that a formal agendized item for July 9th so that we can begin shaping our direction going forward.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I see a little bit of an interaction here between this issue and what the next item is on the agenda. Both get at, how should we be operating? One could read this as the process of actually asking what kind of service should we be getting from either a single general manager, chief of police, or one of each, is going to begin now with robust communication between Mr. Hart and the community. And of course, this committee that is charged with looking at the longer term issues of should we have this separation or not, and the other issues we've been talking about. I think, the process gets started with this new candidate, and hopefully, I think you're going to find lots of opportunity to meet with him and give him your ideas, and part of his obligation is going to be to report back to the board on what he's hearing, and perhaps he can come up with his own recommendations. So these are legitimate questions being raised. I do want to point out that if we do have two separate positions, there is a fiscal issue we have to confront as well, and I hope that'll be part of the study, the longer-term study this second ad hoc committee is going to be engaging in. So if there's no further public comment, I think we have a motion first to amend. We're stuck here just a minute.
Yeah, I know. So I have a few comments about the contract that's proposed here. I had asked the public law group to provide a cost savings analysis. As someone mentioned here, that was something that the board has discussed over the last 6 months. We've mentioned that sometimes hiring a certain kind of employee who's maybe employee might result in cost savings, particularly in the interim period. And according to the analysis that's been done, this contract represents a cost savings of about 20% from what we compensated to our former chief of police and general manager. And that's a reflection of savings with total compensation. And I want to point that out because it sounded like that might have been a concern. I have just one problem with this contract. And I'm going to hold my nose because it's not a material issue, but it's a 9-month contract. And if we look at item 16, 16A is a reference to 30 hours of administrative leave for training. I felt that was a little top-heavy, and I would like to see that down to 15 to 20, particularly because we're talking about such a short term. But aside from that, I don't have any overt concerns now that I understand the cost savings, but I just wanted to make that statement. Obviously not a deal breaker for me, but I think that is a little more than I'm comfortable with.
Any other comments?
Okay, I then move that we adopt the contract as proposed with one exception, and that is that paragraph 2A be amended by council with the appropriate language. 2C, not 2A, be amended by council with the appropriate language to reflect the fact that we would be hiring Mr. Hart into the position of general manager effective June 8th and into the position of chief of police as soon as he passes the full hiring process, which would include background checks and all the required testing. That the contract would go from, as set forth in paragraph 2C, June 8th until March 1, 2016, unless we decide to extend it.
Okay, any discussion on that? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, and Mr. Hart, you're hired.
Thank you, Board of Directors, for this opportunity. I look forward to moving forward, moving the district forward into the community specifically. There's a lot of comments, a lot of stuff. I will tell you that you will have my promise to hear every one of those comments. I hope to do more listening than talking for the first couple months, but as kind of alluded to, I plan on having some community meetings. If the board allows me to do this, I'll post on the website my 100-day plan, all right, which articulates specifically and outlines everything I want to try to do within the first 100 days. Very ambitious, but I'm planning to roll up my sleeves, all right, work with the board of directors, work with the POA, all right, work with the police department, and work, more importantly, work with the community, all right, to move forward and move the district forward as a unit, all right, so we can all be happy. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you very much. We're really looking forward to working with you too. Okay, we move on to item number 2, and I'm going to ask either Chuck or Vanessa to brief the board on that one. Anybody want to begin?
Thank you, Lynn. Let me just pull up my notes here. So Chuck and I are at a friendly impasse as to how to proceed. It was my understanding that this ad hoc committee was convened to steward a process of exploration in terms of our governance structure, and that one of the first things we'd be charged with doing is convening a citizens committee. And then through community outreach and engagement vis-a-vis town halls, basing our conversations, informing our plan by our conversations with folks who know something about restructuring, that we would proceed forward, but it would be a community-driven, a community-informed type of process. There has been talk of a position paper, and the position paper is something that's never been mentioned on the dais until last month. And I actually looked back at 2 board meeting videos to make sure that I understood what was directed to the board, and I think there is a disconnect. To me, a position paper is something that a citizens committee would produce and present to the board after a year-long study of what our governance structure might look like moving ahead. I'm not in a position of making any kind of assertion on a position of the path. My expectation for this meeting was that simply we would be presenting a basic framework as to how we would move forward and get this citizens committee convened. And so that's my interpretation, and based on the minutes and the videos from our meetings, it seems that I'm not incorrect. If the board wants us to take another direction and change course, we can deliberate that now, but a position paper at the fore feels to me like putting the cart before the horse, and I don't want a lot of direction coming from the board, particularly when it's so clear that the community wants input as to how to move forward. So that's my perspective. I'll let Chuck.
All right, well, I want to let Chuck respond. I just want to say the plan was, as I remember, that the board was going to select like 2 members apiece, something like that, for a committee to look into this. I'm sorry, what?
That was actually
All right.
Actually, I don't think we're at an impasse at all. It's a question of what are we trying to do here. And my distinct memory is we scoped this thing. And I didn't write a position paper. I tried to write a scope of issues, which I invited Vanessa to respond to. Timing didn't work out, and by the time she got able to get back to me, it was too late for either of us to present anything for tonight. I'm not trying to carve out positions. I'm trying to set the scope of work the board wants this committee to do. And as background here, we talked about using the Park Committee from 1997 as a template. And I went back and looked at the material Lynn Walter gave us, and she had 15 pages of board comments to the committee on what the board wanted the committee to do. And I was, in my own opinion, what I was trying to do was define the scope of issues. There has to be a framework, which is Vanessa's position, but I think the board really has to tell this committee what the board wants it to focus on. One of the people in the community said, unless you scope this right, you're going to spend a lot of time shooting all over the horizon, and you have to kind of narrow the focus. What I prepared was an attempt to narrow the focus. I think if you take out my own thoughts, you have a pretty good list of issues for the board to direct this committee to do, and that's all I was trying to do. I think we still need the board to set as a matter of scope what it is you want this group to do. And my paper was just that. And by the way, I did actually speak with several consultants that were recommended, and I found some interesting things. The CSDA is not prepared to do much in this process at all. They were very clear about that. They have some public relations expertise they can lend us, but they really aren't that helpful. I did speak with another private governmental advisor consultant and they do advise bringing on some professionals to guide the process because you get a better work product. But again, I want to be very clear. My position paper was not that. It was an invitation for comments back so we could hammer something out that made sense. It was a first stab because I was the person who took the initial contact with the CSDA and with the consultant that was recommended to us. It's not carved in stone, but I do want this board to give us some guidance on what it wants us to focus on. It may be community driven, but unless we know the parameters of what that community is directed to do, we're just fumbling like a fish on the deck of a boat.
Well, I encourage you to look at the last, because I don't want to quote them, I have the quote here. But the direction was pretty clear, and if it's not specific enough, that's one thing. But you are cited in the Outlook as referring to a position paper. So by saying it's not a position paper where you've referenced it as such, I think that creates a lot of confusion, and it obviously raises a lot of questions. I don't think we need to author a 7 to 10 page scope. I think you should hurry up, open up the recruitment, and get the application process going for the Citizens Committee, and let them help you frame what to present to the board as a framework.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So it seemed to me that we agreed on at least a set of like 3 or 4 issues that in general we wanted to be looked at, like separation of the GM COP. That was one of them. One was whether the 2 districts should be combined, the fire district and the police district. Pat, was there, or anybody, was there another one that we...
Okay, so to me, we're just making this way too complicated. First of all, I think that both Chuck and Vanessa are trying to get to the same point, which is to give some direction to a committee that will be formed as to what they should look into. And I couldn't agree more with Chuck's position that we need to have some direction from the board as to what that should look like initially. However, I think it's going to morph, right? As projects do. I think that Vanessa would probably agree with that as well, that we have to have some direction. My understanding of what we're going to have this committee look at initially are 4 things. Can we stay with the current configuration? Can we split the GM and COP jobs? And if so, what's the impact of that? Can we merge or consolidate with another district, i.e. El Cerrito? Or with the fire department? Merge or consolidate with the fire department? Or should we contract out to another community like El Cerrito or the sheriffs? That's how I understand what we, as a board, we're going to agree to. We're going to try to, just let me finish, we're going to have this group come up with a process for doing that. I believe that the process, whether we said it before, or I'm going to say it now, I believe the process we should have is we should take those 4 issues. We should then come up with, call it a scope of work, which is what do we expect this committee to do? How are we going to choose the committee? What's the time frame? And how do they report back to us? And once they've done that, then they may find that there's other things that they want to look into. It may be that something we haven't even thought of has come up. It may be that it's fiscally prohibitive to do some of the things we're thinking about. I think that the idea of writing the process down, whether you call it a position paper or a scope of work or whatever, is a good thing to do so they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We are elected to govern, we are elected to make decisions. I think we should define that scope of work with some flexibility in the document so that people can, in fact, look into what may come up in the process.
Thanks, Pat. On page 11 of the March 12 minutes, Director Gillette states that the Ad Hoc Governance Committee should look at 4 items: our current structure, splitting the GM-COP position, contracting L2L Cerrito over the county, consolidating with the fire district. Moreover, the consensus of the board was to leave it to a citizens committee to identify exactly which path should be studied by the ad hoc committee, led by directors Truman Cordova, who were tasked with 2 deliverables: an immediate recruitment process and application for a citizen committee, and a basic outline of how the committee might proceed with the year-long study. So I'm just basing this on this direction that was given, that is on the video, that is in the set of minutes that have been approved. So if we're changing course, that's fine, but my marching orders... Yes, Michelle.
What's different? Just tell me what's different, because that's what I don't understand. What's different from what Chuck's proposing? Because I'm just not understanding the difference.
Yes.
I haven't seen the paper, so I have no idea.
Okay, my understanding was that the first order of business was for us to form the committee. We were going to understand how we accepted applications, and that was our argument, I felt, in March. I was begging that we had that committee formed perhaps by April, May at the latest, and someone said, well, maybe it'll take to June. Here we are in June. No committee on the horizon. That was, I thought, was our first charge. Get that committee together as quickly as possible so that then, because we had the 4 items kind of in mind, that then would come the scope of work as the board saw it, with direction and inclusion from the committee and the board together.
So are we really saying something different, you guys? Unfortunately, because we haven't seen the paper, we're talking about, because we haven't seen the paper, we're talking about something that has no construct. So if we can all agree that these are the 4 things we want to look at, that we need to have a committee, then can you and Chuck take your direction from there? I mean, is there really disagreement here?
Okay. Mr. Toombs just stated that if I took my personal opinions out of the document, then we would have a framework. You know, that is a position paper. He just stated that a few minutes ago, so...
Yeah, but let me be honest with you. I gave this to you April 30th.
That's right.
Let me tell you. I gave this to you April 30th. Oh, now we're stuck. Sorry. I'm stranded.
I gave this to you April 30th, and I invited you to get back with me with comments. And I gave it to you well enough ahead of time of the May meeting. And because of other issues, we both agreed to delay it. We were in the middle of trying to get a new chief hired, so that took precedence. And you still had this, and I invited you to redline this to your heart's content. The first time I heard that you really had any problems with it was last Thursday afternoon. The agenda deadline is Friday afternoon. I can't turn something around overnight, and I told you that. And I never got a red line document from you, Vanessa. I never got anything from you except a discussion that this was coming. You never sent me anything, okay? I'm more than happy to make a process out of this, but the board has to tell us what we're doing, okay?
My point is the board did, and we don't seem to be following that path. And the board...
Then why didn't you respond to this when I gave it to you instead of last Thursday? Why are you waiting until now to make an issue of this? I invited you to comment on this. I invited you to mark it up, and I never got anything back.
She wants to respond.
Chuck, we have discussed this matter via email for the last 4 weeks. I have even referenced our discussions on Nextdoor, actually praising how lovely it is to work with you. So it's not as if I've been incommunicado. What I have stated is that we were in flux with the recruitment process for the GM and COP. We're getting a lot of public feedback, a lot of concern around the affordability of the MOU. Those were the priorities of the board. Okay, and we agreed to that. I sent you a red line document over. I know. This is now, I know, it's the third time you haven't received an email today. I'm happy to send that to you again, but my concern is that your position paper, and no one has, the privilege of reading it, it makes a lot of assumptions, a lot of them that were assuaged by the KPOA meeting with regards to consolidation, for instance. That's one of the reasons I asked to hold off, because I thought we could learn something more about the options for consolidation. And I personally felt, and I think others did too, that Supervisor Joya and Ms. Texera from LAFCO refuted some of the assumptions we're making about consolidation. And I just wanted that to be reflected, but this was written so long ago, I just wanted it to be accurate, and I wanted it to be, less infused with your bias or my bias, and more of a framework so we can just get the process started. And I think we would be helped, frankly, taking that document, sharing it with a citizens committee, and finding a common ground to begin with. Our first charge was to, create a recruitment process and an application. We presented that to the board. That was the first ask of us. So that tells me that that was the beginning of this process, and I just want to get it going. So if the community feels that 2 directors should set the course, that's fine. We need to hear from you. If you think this should be a more community-based process where the community citizens, where the citizens committee convenes and helps us do that, you tell us. But the only issue I'm raising is that we have no business asserting a position on any of this, and that's how you've referenced it for the last 4 weeks.
I invited you to tear it apart. I never had anything, so I'm
Okay.
happy that this is not.
And I'm not saying you're not willing, Chuck. I'm just saying that it's not, let's just find a way to move forward, that's all.
Okay, so can you resend him the red line document? And you might want to just, acknowledge that you got it, Chuck, or give her a call if you don't get it. So the process has been delayed. I think you two can agree. We have the 4 issues. We have to get the committee started. That shouldn't be that hard to agree on. There has been some delay because of other stuff, but a lot of that other stuff's out of the way, so we need to get this process moving.
Okay, I have a comment first. So, first of all, I think you both are working for the same objective, so let's keep that in mind. We're trying to get a committee formed so that we can have some input. I happen to think that the direction has to come from the board as to what we're going to be talking, what we want the committee to look into. As I said before, with some wiggle room for that committee to suggest additional things if they come up with them. There has to be a structure, so it can't be so loosey-goosey that we have a committee out there that's just going to talk about everything, because I think nothing will get accomplished. Our goal is to get something accomplished within a fairly short period of time. So having not seen the document, I'm not sure what the confusion is or what the disagreement is, but if you guys can't do that, then I think we ought to think about reforming that committee and letting 2 other people try it. If that's not going to work, or one of you decides that you're not going to do it, I just think we need to move forward. So let's not have debates about who said to him or whether an email got sent or didn't get sent. Let's focus on what the object is, form a committee with direction from the board about what they're supposed to investigate, and in my opinion, some wiggle room if they want to go a little bit further.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, you want to step up?
Hi, Ryan Anderson. Good evening. Thank you all for your time and your effort over the last 6 months. We've made some big progress in some key areas, so thank you all. I have 5 short questions tonight about plans for the future, and they relate, I think, to the dialogue that was here Briefly speaking, from prior meetings, I think there was, in the sequence of events, there was going to be agreement on the process for selection, there was going to be receiving the candidate's name, selection of the candidates, scoping, and then execution, and then presentation. So my questions relate to that, but in terms of the sequence of events from prior meetings, that was the order. This ties into the last comments that were received here. Very briefly, what's the expected time frame to decide on the selection process for the committee to research the district structure? And can we assume that by the end of this week that we can have the agreement on the process for selection, or recalibrate or reselect?
We can't support that meet in order to agree upon.
We're going to do that at the next board meeting.
Okay, so it's going to be...
We do have an approved application.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the form is approved.
Yes.
You have a pool of candidates.
We have.
Actually, we want to publish the application with a story saying if you're interested in serving on this committee, submit your application by X date for a process of interview. We haven't even decided the selection process yet. There was a discussion.
No, so that was my question. So when can we expect the process to be complete?
Yes, I'd like to address that because at the February meeting, Lynn directed everyone to send their name to Lynn Walter if they were interested in serving on any of the ad hoc committees. So we do have a list from Lynn Walter of folks interested in serving on this governance committee.
So you have a list of names, you have forms.
Lynn Walter.
Is there any, well, let me ask another question. Is there any reason why you can't agree on the process tonight, or is that something you need to deliberate more on?
I think we should just open the recruitment, get the application out there, and let folks who express interest complete the application.
The discussion really is how do we select the applicants? I agree with the notion of doing an interview process, and I think that's what the board adopted.
That's right.
As opposed to sending each board full of 2 members into the pool and say swim. So that's what the application is for, to solicit interest. Now, the only way to really do that is with an outlet story, which Rochelle's going to write for us, talking about the whole process, and maybe even having a link to the application with a scope deadline. There's nothing wrong with getting the application out now and having it due by the July X meeting, whatever the next meeting is.
That's right. Let's see.
Next meeting? Okay.
Yeah, we have
Thank
an application, it's ready to go.
And a brief process, and that's all I'm saying, let's just convene the committee.
We can do that, we can certainly get it going, we can still, that takes care of the mechanics.
So it's of the process, thank you.
Okay. But you still need to decide.
That's fine, but there's no reason why we can't
I
do
have
something.
no problem with that at all.
Yeah, and my understanding was that we would have an application, perhaps an interview, and then that each board member would be allowed 2 choices from that pool of
Yep.
applicants.
Yeah, so once that process, okay, so the next meeting, the process should be,
We don't have a process, if that's a proposal.
I understand, yeah. So for my next question is, once the process is completed, on the next cycle or the next meeting, what's the expected time frame to complete the selection of the committee and to issue the instructions regarding the scope of work? Or put it another way, when do we expect the committee to pick up tools and begin? Is it one more board cycle after there, or is more time expected in terms of the best estimate? When can they begin? Well, there's the process. How long will it take to select the committee?
We should be able to select the committee in the next board meeting.
Okay.
We should be able to do that, right, everybody?
Yeah.
We should be able to
Not if we
select.
have the process in place for how we select.
We adopted one with the application. We adopted one with the application.
Yeah. So if we decide we want to actually select the committee at the next board meeting, what process should we use to do the selection?
You aren't going to give yourself enough. The outlet or whatever device you use to disseminate the application probably won't get it out there until mid-June. If you want to schedule an interview process, you're looking at the July meeting to do the interviews, and then hopefully picking people that night.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard to get this broadcast in a format that people can know it's available to do. The outlet doesn't go out until July 1st, and that's one area. I don't know how many people read next door. I have a hard time reading it at all, but that's another area.
May I ask a question, just as a follow-up? Would it be reasonable to say that within 6 weeks of the next board meeting, within that time frame, you could expect the committee to have completed and formed as a best estimate, not in the process.
Ms. Walters' list, she has her own email list that she sends the link to the application.
But there are other people who might want to apply. I think that's.
We have to find a standardized public medium that people can use.
We'll have the website.
And kiosks.
And kiosk, those
In the
are the
library.
official
Right,
legal
so
challenge.
in the interest of transparency, which we've heard thrown around a lot tonight, it seems like we have to do it in the Outlook. If the Outlook's not published on July 1st, then that's the first time you can get the news out to everyone that we are going to have an application process. You've got to have a few weeks for the applications to be filled out and come back, which means it's probably not until the August meeting that you can have interviews. And maybe you can do the interviews and selection at the same week. So 6 weeks is too short, in my opinion.
Or we hold a special meeting, or we publicize it in
Or we have to
Congress.
have another
Okay.
special meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. So prior to the end of August or sooner is the best estimate for complete information of the committee. And thank you for letting me run along. The third question, on objective, to clarify the goal of the committee, will you be instructing the committee to research, deliberate, and then make a recommendation to you? Or will you be asking the committee to present impartial information and options for the board who will assess the information and decide? Are you asking for a recommendation?
Well, let's back up just a minute. Your question presupposes the committee is going to board what the scope of the supposed to be. I think...
No, it doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't. But yeah.
Okay, I misunderstood it then. I still think the board needs to tell the committee what it's going to do, what it wants the committee to do. The committee will morph, the scope will expand as it uncovers information on the rocks. One of the proposals in my memo to Vanessa here was the notion of using skilled consultants when necessary to present objective information on issues like financial involvement, things like that. There's a whole range of discussions. I had an hour and a half discussion with this consultants group in Sacramento, and they were filled with great ideas about the kind of issues that you should be tackling here and how you should manage the process, the involvement, and the use of consultants to play and all of that. That's what this attempted to do, was string it all out into a process so you can see how it would look.
So Chuck, would you share with us what you suggested?
It's not now, like it's
And I think my question probably wasn't clear, so I'll take another stab at it. I just, let's use the example of GM and COP. Are you asking in the scope, and I agree that the board will instruct the committee on what it wants to hear, and I agree with you on that. Would you expect a recommendation on whether a combined or split role is recommended by the committee, or do you want the committee to present option A, option B for the board to assess?
I want the committee to present options and reasons why one's better than the other.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're going to make...
No, that answers my question. So if the citizens committee believes that one path is better than the other, you expect the citizens committee to take a position saying we believe option A is better than option B, to make a recommendation.
Not just the committee, though. I mean, this may be an area where consultants can take the respective roles. What I'm trying to do here, and I said this to Vanessa very calmly, was people of goodwill made lots of mistakes over the last 25 to 35 years. I want to stop the mistakes with a new set of mistakes and have some objective professional advice about, you're a small community, this is the kind of organization you need to have. One of the people I spoke with said you need to have organizational consultants weigh in on the issue to the committee. Things like that. You want that kind of expertise brought to bear. The committee can then discuss it, and if you want to at some point, you might have a town hall meeting on that issue. You might have a town hall meeting on the type of service you expect the department to provide, and where is the best model for doing that. The current model with 10 cops, the current model with 6 cops, contracting out, any number of things. But you want the committee, the town, and maybe some consultants to weigh in on that with objective, independent recommendations.
I understand. No, thank you. That clarified. I just wanted to know if it went beyond data gathering into a judgment.
Hold on, folks. We're getting to quarter to 10. We need to vote on whether we are going to continue beyond 10 if necessary. We may finish before we take the vote.
I move we extend the meeting until it finishes.
Second motion. All in favor?
No, I have a comment on that. As you know, I perpetually object to the extending the meeting to the very end, as a couple of people mentioned tonight. And I've said, well, as I have said before, and other people implied tonight, I think it is rude to the public to extend it indefinitely. If you want to have, and I agree, an extension is appropriate, but let's set a definite time limit so the audience knows you'll have to re-decide again. I would suggest your extension for 10:30.
Any other comments?
I'd like to really get this piece of work done tonight.
I think we're going to finish within the next 15 minutes.
You have a vote, so
Yeah, so,
you need to vote.
There's been a motion and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.
I vote.
All right. Ricky, can you please note the vote?
Just one other.
Yeah.
And I'll be, thank you for letting me speak long here, and I'll be brief.
Can I just get one thing clear? So, timing-wise, if we actually select a committee in an August meeting, we could use the next meeting to try to, set out what the general charge of that committee is going to be with some detail. That's what you were trying to do.
Yeah, it's different from what you directed us to do, and that's fine, but I'm just here to deliberate that, I'm just here to find out.
I just think it makes sense, we give the committee a charge, and we articulate, got the issues, know what those
And we
are.
agreed to that at the beginning.
Let's not rehash it.
I'm not rehashing it, I'm actually agreeing with Lynn and explaining why, because we don't know what kind of talent exists.
Okay, so let's try to, for the next meeting, let's have a proposal for direction, a directive to the committee to choose the subcommittee.
It's direction to the committee? Are you talking about school board, or are you talking
How
about?
we're going to, what the charge of the committee is going to be. We will agree on what the charge of the committee is going to be at the next meeting we hold in July, and then we'll select the committee.
I totally disagree. I think that we should choose our committee, inform it, and then in conjunction, work with the committee to prepare a scope of work.
I want the
Absolutely
committee-
board directed, but with our people in place.
So here's the only problem that I see with that, because I understand the logic of that in terms of getting people selected, but if you're going to be interviewing people to serve on the committee, you have to know what the committee's going to do, right? Because if part of the charge of the committee is to evaluate the financial implications, you might want people on the committee who have financial experience, right? If you don't know that when you're making the selection, I feel like we know it, but if we don't know it, if we haven't confirmed that, then you may make choices that are not right for what the charge of the committee is going to be. I mean, just think about it. If you were trying to select a committee to negotiate a contract with the chief, you'd want to make sure that that committee had some expertise in negotiating contracts, whereas picking two random people. So that's my only concern. If we're pretty clear on what the scope of work is, this is why I don't understand why there's controversy. Because to me, it's pretty clear. It's these four things. But I don't know where, so I don't know where the confusion is. Well, can you answer my question? Where's the confusion?
Because it's my understanding from the meeting, and in reviewing the video of that meeting, and reading the minutes of that meeting, that we weren't supposed to, offer a position paper to this board. That part of what we offered to this board, in terms of exactly what we were going to explore, was going to be informed by the Citizens Committee that, convened around us.
I think, if I misunderstood you guys, I apologize, but my understanding is clearly, you better get a scope of work first. Ryan was the person who made the point, unless you scope this correctly, you'd be shooting off in 1,000 different directions, all to no avail.
But scope is fourth on his list.
Yes. It's after the convening of the Citizens Committee.
I'm telling you, if you don't know where you're going.
That's the problem.
Yes.
You'd like to tell us.
Yes, that wasn't, the board didn't ask you for a position paper.
I'm not. I think the board has a responsibility to say, this is the scope of work for this committee. And then the committee can morph into additional things if necessary.
They can come to the board and say, look, we want to change it. For example, what are the priorities? We have 9 months and possibly 3 more after that to figure out whether we're going to separate the GM and GPPs, right? So that's something we can that's something the board would say, please get to this first. That would be part of the charge, right? Anybody argue with that?
We've already discussed that. You've already said the same thing, it's in the minutes, Lynn, so we earn because it would be summer and folks would be gone, and to let that run a little longer than usual because of that, and that we would, Chuck and I would present this, convening group, an idea of what we wanted to present to the board, and that you would sort of bless that, and we would just continue to move forward.
So is the only dispute whether we should choose the committee before we set the scope of work? Is that the dispute?
Yes.
No, it's not. It's a fundamental on who sets the scope. of
Right,
work.
that was my second question.
That's the biggest single issue. You can work on parallel tracks to select a committee from the community, because I can guarantee you who's managing a parallel. The question is, the board needs to tell that committee what the board wants it to research. Not the other way
We want to
around.
set priorities too. I mean, some things need to be dealt with sooner than others.
So do you agree with that? Would you rather have the committee, the community decide what the scope of work is?
To work with the ad hoc committee to have a discussion about that and find some consensus. Because the community has been expressing they want involvement and they want engagement, and we're not doing a good job. I'm sorry, we're not doing a good job.
Okay, got it.
Can I ask if it's possible for you as a board tonight, since you've all identified the same 4 items, and it seems like that's been consistent over the last several meetings, that is really the general scope of what you want this committee to look at. And to me, what it sounds like, and I didn't see the paper that's being discussed, so I don't know what was in it, but it does sound to me like it's more of a deliverable that you would give to a consultant to complete than to a citizens committee. Well, a citizens committee is not going to be doing the kind of level of work that I would expect a consultant to do, nor have the expertise. However, I do believe that you may find some people in the community who have some expertise in the area. So just like we did on the park committee, we had some people with very general knowledge about what they wanted out of a park, and we also had some planners. And because of that combination, we were able to come up with a master plan that is now your park and has more or less been followed with some changes. So that was how, when you brought this issue forward, I thought it was going to be handled. And so just in the sort of sense of timing, I think what you need to do right now is to come up with the process for how you're going to select this committee and get it off the ground, but not necessarily to give such detailed direction. I do think you, as Ryan made some great points about what you need to have. You need to be able to give this committee a focus. Are you going to be just gathering information for us? Or are you going to be coming back with recommendations for us? And those types of things, those would be important for you to know to give the direction to this working group. But, I mean, I think, Chuck, you're right that at some point you need the professional support behind this, and the things that you're looking at are deliverables that you give to a consultant, but perhaps not to a citizens committee. So maybe tonight, I don't know if it's possible, but if you could all agree to these 4 items, which sounds to me like are the ones, the main key issues you want the community to look at, maybe that would get your process off the ground a little quicker than waiting until July. Is that possible to vote on? I don't know if you need to, but perhaps that would help with this so long. No, I don't think it was.
Well, at that point, it wasn't adopted because there was a generalized discussion back and forth, and my whole objective with my paper here was to say, all right, board, this is what you talked about, now these are the issues, now vote on it. The board has not voted on it. I don't care.
The minutes reflect that.
No, they don't reflect that, Vanessa. The board, it reflects a generalized overview. It does not reflect a targeted decision. These are the things we want. Pat made a statement, there was never a motion seconded or passed, that those were the objectives. That's what I was trying to do with this, was to set the objectives, have the board adopt it, and have our marching orders here. I looked at the minutes carefully before I put the paper on this, because I didn't want to put it in the middle of it. But the reality is, this board has not adopted specific deliverables for the committee. It has not. It has a wide-ranging discussion. It has not focused down on key issues. This was the intent to get it to do that. Because I think, my opinion is, you need to have some direction before you go out the door.
Why don't we do this? If you two can agree by next meeting on how to frame this, why don't we publish your proposal, and Vanessa, why don't you publish yours?
I'd like to hear public comment on one.
Yeah, and the last, you've been discussing this, so my last question was on scope, and the quote from the minutes here is the other issues related to district structure, and specifically, there was a request, or there will be a request to report back to the board on possible alternatives to the current GMCOP and other issues related to district structure and mission statements. So are those 4 items that were stated earlier, are those the other items? So there's other issues related to district structure and mission statement.
The board hasn't agreed what those other issues are, that's the problem. There has been no.
So it's not, those 4 issues are not the other.
The board has to agree.
No, those are supposed to be the 4 issues, but others may throw out an exploration of those 4 issues.
It states by.
I'm Chuck, I understand, yeah. So you want to provide flexibility for the committee to find those pieces. So that.
That's built into it. It's an evolving process.
Yeah.
But until you agree.
No, I understand. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Great, thank you very much for your patience and to you as well.
You all know you wrote the board several weeks ago with a proposal that we start some town meetings to gather some information, specifically one that would be a town meeting for the board to sit and listen to what the community wants from their police services as a beginning to discuss and evaluate these 4 issues, which is what I clearly heard you were charged to do. And I was assured, and I asked that to be put on the agenda, but I was assured by our board members that we would be given a format that would include this, and as I see, okay, well, maybe we'll get to it at the July meeting. This is all getting pushed down the line, and what we have a 9-month, maybe a 12-month deadline. We're never going to reach that, and I don't see why we can't get the first town meeting that I propose, because it's just a listening. It's just a listening. It's not a discussion. It's not an argument. This is what I was proposing for ground rules. And that will get at least that part of it going. I think there should be subsequent town meetings on different aspects so the public can voice it without the time constraint of the way these board meetings work. But as I feared, this whole process is getting pushed away, and I would like to see it getting started like a little sooner than August. The other thing is, I don't think that the committee should be making a specific recommendation. I would like to see the data they've gathered for all of them, and then let there be a discussion on how people want to proceed.
So I think we should go forward with getting the application out sooner rather than later, since we've agreed upon the application. And it sounds like the Outlook is a place where it should be announced, it should be posted as well, and perhaps sent out through next door. That should happen as soon as possible, which I think is going to be July. I think that means on the August meeting, we should discuss and we should have a recommendation from Chuck and Vanessa, unless you're unable to come to one, in which case give us your competing recommendations as to how we should proceed from there.
But that would be July.
No, because the July meeting won't be your application. Well, I guess the application will not be finalized. It'll be more than a month. I mean, more than a month.
One is this thing, what's the charge going to be, whether those two can agree on it or not, but that doesn't have to wait for selection.
That's right,
You're right.
exactly.
So I'm thinking that
Well,
discussion having in July, the selection can happen in August.
That sounds like what I was trying to do, and no offense to you.
That's what I think Chuck has been suggesting. So I haven't seen the paper, so I don't know, but let's not go there.
So is that what we?
Yes, maybe the date again.
So for the July meeting, you two try to agree on a charge of some sort for this committee, a statement of purpose and some set of objectives based on the 4 that we talked about. Perhaps the disagreement we already love the detail to specify.
That's all we disagree.
But, so,
Yes.
So, okay, so I'm going to ask you and Chuck to try to agree on the level of detail, and if you can, submit competing proposals for the next meeting. We'll deliberate, we'll decide, okay? That's for July. And then for the August meeting, we'll actually do the process of selecting the committee members, okay?
So July, Vanessa and I will present what we think is a recommended scope of work. August, we start the selection process.
We finished the selection process.
Yeah, just find it.
Yeah. So that, just so everybody heard, so he was just trying to get clear on the schedule, and the schedule would be some sort of scope of work agreement that we come to at the July board meeting, and then at the August board meeting, we select the candidates who apply for the positions, correct?
I think I'm valuable quick here. Okay, so Rochelle's going to be writing the next article. It's easy enough for you to put some kind of a lead in with a link to the application in your piece for the July 1 Outlook. Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay, and then we can post it on the job kiosks around town, and at that point, both trains come to the station at the same time. We should have a scope of work by August or by July, and we should have the candidates selected, and then we start moving the train out of the station.
And let me just say, I like the idea of, just thinking out loud again, we can come back to this later, but to me, it would be most helpful if the committee actually did come up with some recommendations, but they should be recommendations backed by data. And I think the data, they should use a consultant or consultants of some kind to help them get data, not just opinion. That's all.
So I have one request, and that is the way it's characterized in the Outlook will be important in terms of what they're applying for. So I think it should be generic, since we don't exactly know what the committee's going to do, that they will be, this is an application for people who are interested in serving on a committee that will look into different ways of structuring our district and providing police services or something like that. I think it should be a neutral statement, not that you will do it neutrally, but as neutral as you can make it without too much detail, since we're not sure on the detail. I'm sure on the detail, but maybe we're not sure on the detail.
All right, we have some more comments up there. Bring the mic up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here. Oh, no, you guys were. First off, the application is going to be interesting, because one thing comes to my mind is how you make that judgments. Everybody brings something to the table, so it's almost like you were saying, well, here's the job we want. I think there's historical experience, there's lots of different kinds of experience, so it shouldn't just be relegated on, oh, just that they have financial background, blah, 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 blah. But I think one of the other things I keep hearing is there's sort of, I think the confusion in this tennis match is that it's selecting the committee first. I think the rub is that having the board tell them what they want. See, that's what we hear. I don't think that's what's said. I think Pat mentioned it, have flexibility and be open, that you set guidelines. So guidelines is a much better word, because it doesn't say, here's what I want you to find. Here's what we want you to do, kind of in a general way. Be open enough to take other, a variety of ideas. We're an out-of-the-box community. We're small, we want services, and we have to pay for it somehow. So it's going to be a difficult task to figure these out, and it's not like, there's not too many communities like us. So I think we got to be out-of-the-box thinkers a little bit. So that's what I have to say.
Is there any reason that we could not have an open town meeting where people get a chance to speak? We know what the issues are. There are a lot of people who are well informed, and that the board members simply listen to what people are saying. They may, in fact, decide to do otherwise, but at least there would be an opportunity for people to voice their opinions and perhaps have some influence over the direction that the board gives.
Let me say the two concepts, what you just suggested, what Mabry suggested earlier, and what we're talking about here are not mutually exclusive. We can do both. We can have town meetings. I know Mr. Hart is interested in, you know, having an open door policy with people so they can come and talk to him. We can do both.
I'm simply talking about the sequence in which this happens.
Right, I understand you're suggesting that the town hall would precede the committee maybe getting too far along. I disagree with that. I think it would not be productive at this point to have a town hall meeting where we have people just generally discussing, because there's a lot of information and misinformation out there. The point of the committee is to get people who are going to go and gather data and get information, and then we can have an informed discussion. So they can come, certainly people can come to the KPPCSD meeting and talk to us about what they think the direction should be, but I think you want to save your town meeting for the big pitch of, okay, we've done some research, we've got our feet on the ground, we've got our feet wet, I guess, and now we're going to have a discussion and get some input from the community. We're not going to exclude community, at least in my mind, we wouldn't exclude community input, but I think the committee needs to get together, have some idea of how they're going to proceed, then have a town meeting, get input from the community, and then move forward. This is something, however, that Chuck and Vanessa should work out, and I'm sure this is part of what the detail is in the plans, in my expectation.
I'm asking you why you are afraid to hear people.
I'm not afraid.
Why are we discouraging me? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, wireless mic is what we need. Okay, I'm free June 22nd and June 24th. If anybody wants to book any space, the community center, and call, I'll show up.
I'll show up too.
And, yeah, so if you want me to sit and listen, those 2 evenings I know I'm free, not free 4th of July week, you can email me and I'll tell you my schedule, and I will show up where you need me.
I'll be there.
Saying June 22nd and June 24th.
That's a Monday night and a Wednesday night.
That's a Tuesday night and Thursday night, right? Is it?
No, it's a Monday night and a Wednesday night.
I'll be in Florida on the 24th.
Sorry about that. We have another evening that you like to present. Too bad, I'm sorry about that. In my opinion, there are so many people, and I see that most of them have gone now. There are many people who have spent a great deal of time following events in town and really have informed decisions to make and informed opinions. And they ought to be given an opportunity to speak.
They will be given an opportunity, Celia. It's just a matter of time. All I'm saying to the committee that we are
I understand what you've said.
We're asking to form a committee that will be responsible for engineering this process.
I know, and that means that you are directing that. The direction is coming from those who are already part of it.
We were elected to do governance.
And I'm trying to say that events of the last few months have been so upsetting that it is time perhaps to open your ears to other people and not in the confines of a board meeting where we have limited time and rules to follow.
Time limits in a board meeting.
There should be,
Yes. It's also our job, not just to, make decisions, but actually be responsive to the electorate.
We are being responsive.
No, you're not.
Hold on. Everyone has their name.
If the community somehow can pull themselves together and, conduct a town hall meeting, I will join Rochelle and I will be there. I believe there needs to be, more listening and less micromanaging of this. Clearly, this last 6 months we have little improvement in our community engagement. You're the community outreach coordinator, Pat. We should not be discouraging town halls. We should be
not discouraging town halls. I'm just trying to have this proceed in an orderly fashion. That's all. So, okay, you guys, we just disagree with it. So I understand that you're thank you very much. And Vanessa, I disagree with you. I do think there's been incredible progress made, and I believe that we all can take credit for that on the board for trying to work together. So I keep trying to make it divisive. It's not divisive.
I'm a little confused. So let me try and get the scramble in here, kind of into an omelet at least. I see there being 3 stages, and I'm not exactly sure how each of those stages would be formed, and I don't think anybody is. The first stage is for the issues to be defined. That's the first stage, to define the issues. Whose responsibility is that? It's all of our responsibility to define the issues. We should all have input in doing that. Now,
That'd be very smart.
pardon?
I agree.
Good. Oh, so thrilled. The second stage, and the issues can be defined by all of us, as I said, and we can present them as a series of options. What are the options that we have to deal with? The second stage is to provide us with information. By us, I mean all of us, with information. How are we going to get that information? I would think that the board, in its capacity, has the ability to produce certain information that some of us don't, and others of us can produce other information, and those of us who wish to, and who have an inclination in that direction, can process the information and put out the information so the community has shared information, data, that's reliable. And the community can then express its opinions to the board, its conclusions, its analysis, and all of that. In the final analysis, you all have to vote and make the decisions, the final decisions. That's your responsibility and your duty. And how we do this is best if we can maximize the participation in all parts of the process. Then we can bring together the collective wisdom that exists in this community. And there's a great deal of collective wisdom that exists in this community. And so we need to be searching for ways to do that. That's what I was trying to say in the statement I read in the beginning. We need to look for ways to increase what I'm calling participatory democracy.
Can I ask a question? Or make a statement?
You want the microphone, Chuck?
It's in here, Leonard. It's in here. The notion of community involvement is in here. Every stage we could possibly jam it in. And if we don't have the community participating, we're wasting everybody's time. I don't disagree with that one bit. I call for as much community participation, town hall meetings throughout this process.
And one of the things that's just really getting me excited in a very mellow way is seeing how many people are coming out and participating compared to the way it used to be. And the level of participation is of such a higher quality than it ever was. I'm feeling fundamentally positive about the direction of the community. Fundamentally positive. We've got a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of issues to be decided. But the only way to do this is for us to come together. That's the only way for us to do this.
I agree with everything you said. Thank you.
My proposal for a town meeting was for one specific topic, because I think a town meeting open to all is just going to be a free-for-all, and
Say that again, I wasn't sure I heard that.
no, excuse me, I gave, Okay, because I was very specific in the proposal that it be on one topic only, was what the community wanted from a police force.
Boy, that's in there.
No, well, okay, but I wrote this proposal, now we're talking about a general one, and I understand the fear, so I do not see why we can't go ahead and at the end of my proposal, I said I could see there's future town hall meetings on other specific aspects that develop along the way, but I felt that first, in order to start talking about what we wanted from police services, we needed to know what the community wanted. And it was very specific. It would be only on what the community wanted. There would be no argument, no discussion, but people could say what they wanted, and anything else was off topic. And I think that can be started as soon as we can rent the hall and get the notices out, because the whole process is going to take, as you can see, it's getting pushed on down the line, and I think that's one aspect that could be started before you have your direction, because we know the principal topic is how we're going to manage the police services, whether it's dividing up those two jobs, whether it's contracting out, whether it's, whatever. I don't see why we can't get that one topic town meeting started. And that specific point was not addressed. You just then moved on to, well, town meetings are going to be a free-for-all, and
Actually, one of the issues in here that I raised is the notion of asking.
okay, you're the only one, you've got a paper, but we haven't seen
I
it.
know, but I'm telling you, one of the issues I raised here is what does the community want by way of police services?
And people can voice their opinions, and we can all be listening, and then you can be organizing your committee.
Build it into an overall structure so we know where it comes in.
Let's get it moving sooner than July or August.
This was done off of April.
So maybe if you had your way, when would you have the town?
I gave a number of dates, and I said about 4 weeks after the new general manager came on.
Okay. So we're talking about
July.
We're talking about
We're talking July.
So we're talking about July versus August, right?
Yes, because that will get you that aspect started, because there's more town hall, more public input gatherings that will be desired by those of us who ask for those sorts of things.
Got it, thank you for the clarification.
Mother, may I?
I think, Pat, now you're good. For now.
I see the town meetings as kind of plowing the field and turning up the earth. And what I would like to see come out of that is formulating questionnaires for SurveyMonkey to really take the temperature of the community in the most scientific way we can manage in terms of what the community wants.
And that's a question for the committee to figure out if that is a viable way to do it, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
That's a question for the committee as a whole to decide if that works or not, if that's efficient. I have no problem with the survey. I have no problem with all of these different tools being blended into this cocktail and shaken up and poured. I have no problem with that at all.
Okay,
We're in heated agreement.
okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, John.
I agree, of course, with the concept of a town meeting. Lower. I agree very much with the concept. Pardon? My name is Barbara Steinberg, in Kensington for decades. I believe that a town meetings are very important, but I think to make the most useful for people coming, you really need to do some work beforehand in terms of proposing for instance, the business of split. What does that mean in terms of the budget, in terms of how that would be worked out? People need to know that before having a useful discussion. Contracting with El Cerrito, what does that mean in terms of police officers and the availability of police officers in Kensington? Consolidating with the fire department, what does that mean in terms of service? People need to know that to have a useful discussion in a town meeting. I think that research has to be done.
Chuck has incorporated that. Chuck has incorporated those types of meeting. I think the kind of meeting that's being requested now is one where the board just listens to.
Not a discussion.
Not a discussion. This, what they're discussing now, what you're proposing, is that right?
Yes, just a listening. Just a listening for the community to hear the community and the board to hear the community, but not a discussion or an argument, or it's just a listening for everybody on both sides.
Okay, so I actually think we're in agreement that everyone wants to have as much community input as possible. It sounds like what we'd like to have preliminarily is a listening tour of some sort.
I was very explicit.
Right, and so I think that where I would disagree with that is I would make that a function of the committee once it's been selected, and I would do it in August. I might make it their first charge, but I would make it the committee's responsibility. The board could be present. I would be present if I were here to be there, but I think this should be the committee beginning to solicit community input. So if we're only talking about July or August, and the format is basically what you want, and we agree to agree.
Well, you can see I'm worried about the delays.
I know. If it were France, we couldn't do it in August.
I'm sorry. Yeah, oh, well. Well, would you like to know the week I'm away in August?
No.
We'll schedule it.
Thank you.
So do we have a charge going forward now? It sounds like for the July meeting, at least, we need to have the, you and the charge.
Yes. Hopefully,
Proposal for
you
second.
agree with it.
And
If
August,
you don't, then you both submit what you propose and decide that meeting. Or whatever.
in August, we're going to select the candidates.
And then when does the council become the rest?
Looks like they're going to run on themselves, so. June 22nd, June 24th, is that right, Rochelle?
I'm free then. I mean, if you want to schedule, I will work too. So.
Are you looking at me?
Or
Yes.
whoever. Yes, I will just email me and we can discuss it.
Yes.
You put notice out.
I've been to several meetings where I wasn't quite informed about the topic, or I didn't understand the positions of my neighbors, and that compelled me to, for instance, apply to KMAC. And I wouldn't have had that information, and I wouldn't have wanted to participate in it unless I had been in a larger, organized discussion about where my neighbors were going with, their biases, or I think it's helpful, and we need to do more listening and less talking.
So anytime you need to meet me for coffee, you need to talk, you just email and we'll get the time started.
I think no one has a unique spot there. All of us are more than happy to meet anyone for coffee or email or whatever to talk about.
Well,
I do think that the best format that I see for town hall meetings is the one run by Gail for the KPOA. It's a really good format. It has some direction and organization to it. I think it's extremely well rated.
We all specific recommendations on, I volunteered to organize it, and I gave very specific, list of logistics that needed to be taken care of, and I recommended Gail as my first choice, I thought she did a good job, but.
Well, the thing that made her meeting successful was that it's not just people getting up and saying what they think. She organized it so that there were some presenters to provide some information. discussion ensued, there was some organization and structure to the comments that came afterwards. That's what made all of her sessions successful. So maybe you have a comment on that.
My only comment about what I think Marby was, was suggesting is really what I felt like something that perhaps now our new general manager, police chief, would be able to conduct, which is really just an opportunity for people to express their interests and what they want from the police service. And I do believe in the interviews that all the candidates actually said that was something that they would do. So, I mean, I'm willing to help with this, but I really honestly believe this is a role of the new general manager with your concurrence, and perhaps that's something that could happen in July, even before this committee gets going, because while it will inform some of the things that the committee might consider, I do believe it's kind of a separate issue. It's really an opportunity for the general manager and chief to hear concerns of the community. So, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but perhaps you would be able to conduct that type of meeting with the assistance of your staff. But I will make myself available if you need it.
In my view, if a lot of people want to come out and just, as Mavry says, just say, here's what I think we need in terms of policing. And they want to have Mr. Hart there to hear what they have to say. And I thought it was interesting, Mavry said, no, not really any dialogue back and forth, just let everybody get up and say what they want. I don't see that as hurting the process. It's just one extra thing. And timing-wise, you know, if we do it in July, fine. If we have to wait till August, it's not the end of the world. They're not mutually exclusive, two different things. And I think there's nothing wrong with it as a way for Mr. Hart to get some sense of what all these different issues are and how strongly people feel about them. And it may help the committee get some perspective as well. So I don't have a problem with it. It's just that we have a lot of meetings ahead of us in the next couple of months, so we should schedule it at a time when people aren't going to be burned out on meetings, number one. And number two, we want to get new faces. We don't want the same old crowd coming. We want to get, you know, the real community out here to say what they understand, what they don't understand, and what they want from their police.
That's right. We are the real faces.
You're part of it, but I mean, we need more, you know, you're the most vocal part of it. But there are lots of other folks out there, and the whole point is to make it successful. We want to hear your voices, as well as yours. I'm saying not yours, but, you know, we need more.
I'm glad you hear from Zoom.
And I think the community-wide mailing brought people out.
The PTO, the Property Owners Association.
Association did.
Yeah. So, I mean, the only constraint you have for these, you know, if you use the Outlook as your main source of information, is you have to work with their deadlines, as you know. So that would push this. You'd have to make a decision to do this in mid-June in order to get in the Outlook for July.
How much is the community mailing cost?
Probably, you know, around 1,000, 1,200, just if you were just doing a single page.
Just a postcard.
Well, that's the word.
Or, I don't know, postcards cost.
Well, maybe we can try to get word on that.
Yeah.
But I think it would probably be a lot easier to manage if we did it in August. I know time is slipping by, but we have
Early August?
early. But you said mid-August.
No, you said it. I said 4 weeks after he came on board.
Well, that's going to be like July 9th.
Well, that's what I said. Then you were pushing it to August.
No offense, but I move the adjourn.
I'm sorry, what?
I move the adjourn. It's done with their business.
So we have our marching orders, and we'll go back to the wrestling matters we come up with. If we don't, well, we'll give each of what our opinions are. But I think, as I told Vanessa, it's much better to come to some kind of mutual understanding on this, because if we can't agree, the committee's never going to agree.
All right,
Can you just restate what your marching orders are?
well, what I'm thinking is that I think what we're talking about is putting this community meeting that Mabry suggested and others on the agenda for the July meeting. We can discuss it, take a vote on it, set it up for August, and try to do a mailing. That makes sense?
Do you intend to have a manager's process? You're just going to let people come out and give confession or what?
Well, we'll have to work that out at the next meeting. I'll put it on the agenda and we'll discuss it and try to.
I think Vanessa should propose
You all got my proposal, did you get that, Chuck?
I did, and I built it, it was
No, I
already.
know, you responded, okay, that was my specific.
So, I mean, you might be pleasantly surprised. I have no idea what this paper says, but maybe this paper says have a meeting.
Well,
every
he
year.
implied there was going to be well, similar, same thing, that we were all going to hear tonight, but,
I just hope that there would be something, Chairman, besides this hour and a half a day.
Well, okay, so we will take it up at the July meeting, and we'll put it officially on the agenda, and let's shoot for a meeting in August, along the lines of what you're talking about, as part of the overall program.
Well, I think that's something we'll discuss in July.
Right. Okay, put it on the agenda.
So it's the idea that Chuck and Vanessa will be developing a charge, scope of work?
Yes,
by July?
yes, and that'll also be on the July agenda. Okay?
Will we be getting some information, as Barbara said, about finances and about legal ramifications?
No, that's gonna take some time.
That's going to be something else.
That's gonna take a little more time.
I was wondering how many of these town halls you're envisioning in the next year or so.
But he's gonna have to tell us that. It's how many big issues require community input. That's how many town halls you have.
But they have to have information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's why I had this schedule of events after you developed enough information base to go forward.
You know, frankly, this meeting that Mabry's talking about is kind of a way for Mr. Hart to get introduced to what folks in the community feel about it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what more they'd like to see, what less they'd like to see. It'll be his introduction, and that's the first step. And I don't know how many community meetings that we are going to have to manage that. We can't have a community meeting every month. People won't come. Well, I mean, other than these meetings. So, anyway, somebody should adjourn.
Well, wait a minute, we don't have the agenda. The Laura walked off.
I think so. That's it. Hold on. That's the last item. So, in that case, I have to move to adjourn. I second the motion. Any discussion?
I have one. You can keep it. I have it. I just gave it to Laura. Thank you very much for your time.
Any discussion on adjournment?
Well, I don't know, let's think about it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes